Welcome back. Tonight, we're leaving the comfort of your warm bed and trading it for something far colder, heavier, and far less forgiving. We're heading back nearly 2,000 years to the bitter frontiers of the Roman Empire. Places where the wind howled through the Alps, snow buried the camps, and even the most disciplined soldiers of the ancient world shivered in silence under leather tents that froze stiff by dawn. If you've ever thought the Romans lived lives of luxury in marble villas, forget it. Those were the senators and poets, not the men who carried spears and shields for a living. The real Rome marched on blisters, bled into frozen ground, and tried to sleep in temperatures that could kill a man before sunrise. This isn't about glory. There are no parades, no shining armour glinting in sunlight, no grand speeches echoing through the forum. This is about what happened after the fighting. When the orders stopped for the night, the fires dimmed, and thousands of men tried to find warmth under animal hides that cracked in the cold. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to dim your lights. Maybe turn on a quiet hum of white noise, or a fan, and let the modern world fade out. Because tonight, you're not in your room. You're on the northern frontier of the Roman Empire, somewhere near the Rhine or the Danube, surrounded by mud, snow, and the low grumbling of men too cold to sleep. You're wearing a wool tunic, a cloak that smells like damp sheep, and boots stiff with ice. You've just finished marching 20 miles through slush and sleet, carrying your gear, your tent, your armour, and your exhaustion. You're hungry, half frozen, and your reward for surviving the day is a patch of mud beneath a hide tent and a thin blanket shared with your comrade who snores like a dying ox. This was life for the Roman soldier in winter campaigns. No villas, no feasts, just survival, discipline, and the faint hope that spring would come before your toes turned black. So tonight, let's walk slowly into that world together, through the frozen mud, the heavy air, the smoke of dying campfires, and the weight of history that slept restlessly under the leather roofs of the Roman legions. You've made camp on the empire's edge. The snow is falling. The wind cuts like a blade. And sleep is the only battle you have left to win before morning. The cold wakes you before the light does. Not the gentle kind of cold that pricks your skin and makes you pull the blanket higher, but the kind that bites deep enough to make your bones feel hollow. It's the middle of a Roman winter, somewhere near the Rhine frontier, and you've been sleeping, or trying to, inside a tent that's more frozen leather than shelter. The air outside is white with frost. The breath of hundreds of men lingers in the camp like a pale fog. Every sound is muffled, like the world itself is buried beneath ice. You don't want to open your eyes, but you do, because the centurion will be calling soon. And in the Roman army, the only thing colder than the wind is disobedience. You shift under the cloak that's supposed to pass for a blanket. It's rough, heavy, and stiff from last night's snow. The wool has frozen in patches, turning it into a crusty slab more suited for roofing than comfort. You can feel the earth beneath you, hard, uneven, and frozen solid. The straw laid out the night before has flattened into a mat of ice. It offers no softness, no warmth. Your back aches from the ground's refusal to yield. Your shoulders from the weight of your armour that hangs beside you, glazed with frost. You can see your breath drifting in the dim light, filtering through the tent flap. It curls upward like smoke, vanishing into the gloom. The faint crackle of dying embers from last night's fire still lingers somewhere outside. You wish the heat could find you, but the fire pit is a luxury for the men on duty nearest to it. You're not one of them tonight. You got what's left of the warmth. Thin air that smells like smoke, sweat, and the sour tang of boiled grain. Your nose is numb. Your fingers stiff as sticks. You bring your hands to your mouth and breathe into them, trying to coax life back into the skin. It doesn't help much. The air steals the heat before it can do any good. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking it around your chin. It smells like wet wool, leather, and weeks of unwashed effort. There hasn't been a proper bath since the campaign began. Water here is for drinking, not scrubbing. And even then, it's often half ice when it reaches the cup. Somewhere outside, a trumpet sounds, low, long, and grim, the signal to rise. You hear movement all around you. Men grunting, shifting, cursing softly as they force their bodies awake. The frozen air fills with the sounds of the living. Armour creaking, leather straps tightening, boots scraping against the ground. No one speaks loudly. Voices are hoarse and quiet, as if they're afraid the cold might punish them for being too bold. You roll onto your side and push yourself up, the cloak sliding off your shoulders. The shock of air against your skin makes you gasp. Your breath turns into a cloud in front of your face. Your tunic feels damp, the sweat from the night clinging to the wool, now frozen along the seams. You slept in your clothes because stripping down meant death. The chill is sharp enough to steal your will. Every movement feels like effort. Every inhale like swallowing ice. You look around the tent. 6 men in total, huddled close. Their faces pale, chapped, and grey with fatigue. A few still pretend to sleep, holding on to the illusion for another moment. One man pulls his cloak over his head like a child trying to disappear. Another groans as he bends his knees, the sound of frozen joints loud as snapping twigs. It's a small miracle that any of them are alive at all. The tent's thin leather walls are coated in frost on the inside, glinting faintly in the early grey light. When one of the men moves too suddenly, ice flakes fall like dust from the ceiling. There's no talking about comfort here. Comfort isn't a word that belongs to the Legion. Survival is the only vocabulary that matters. You've been stationed here for months, building roads through mud that turns to iron in winter, guarding passes where even the locals don't linger, watching forests where enemies might be, or might just be shadows. Every night, the tents are pitched in neat lines, perfectly ordered, just as Rome demands. But order doesn't stop the cold. The grid of camps is a graveyard of exhausted bodies, wrapped in brown wool, all breathing in unison, all trying not to freeze. You rub your arms, trying to get the blood moving. It hurts. Your skin feels like it belongs to someone else. You reach for your boots, frozen stiff, the leather cracking as you bend them open. They're caked with mud from the march, now solid as rock. You slip your feet inside, wincing as the cold grips your toes. No socks, just thin cloth strips wound around your feet, stiff with sweat and frost. You can't remember the last time they were dry. Outside, a centurion's voice cuts through the camp. Harsh, sharp. The language of Rome doesn't need to be shouted to command. You know what comes next? Formation, inspection, orders. The routine never changes, no matter the weather, no matter how many men died the night before from sickness or exposure. Discipline is the Empire's fire, and it burns even when the world freezes. You crawl toward the tent flap and push it aside. The cold outside hits you like a blow. The sky is a pale, endless grey. The ground, a patchwork of frozen mud and slush. Tents stretch in every direction, identical, silent, except for the dull sounds of movement. Smoke rises from a few fires, where guards have kept the coals alive through the night. Most of the fires are dead, reduced to faint black circles ringed by ice. The camp looks more like a field of frostbitten corpses than an army. Men stand hunched over, cloaks drawn tight, breath clouding around them. Some are trying to light fires again, striking flint with trembling hands. Others squat near buckets of frozen water, breaking the ice with knives to scoop out slush for boiling. The smell is a mix of smoke, sweat, wet wool, and iron. It clings to everything. A thin snow starts to fall, soft but relentless. The flakes stick to your hair, your cloak, your eyelashes. No one reacts. It's just another layer added to the misery. The camp is quiet in that Roman way. No complaints, just the sound of obedience. The men have learned that words waste energy better spent on survival. You shuffle towards the nearest fire pit, hoping to steal a little warmth. The coals glow faintly, giving off more smoke than heat. The soldier tending it glances up but doesn't speak. He is rubbing his hands together over the embers, his fingers cracked and bleeding. He nods once. You nod back. It's enough. Talking feels pointless when the air itself punishes you for opening your mouth. A pot of something sits beside the fire, bubbling sluggishly. The smell is faintly sour. Grain boiled with whatever's left from the rations. Barley, maybe. It's food, or close enough. You crouch beside it, waiting for your turn. The legion eats in order. Even in the wilderness, the structure of Rome never breaks. When it's your turn, you take a ladleful into a wooden bowl. The steam fogs your face for a brief, blissful second. You drink it down quickly before it cools, ignoring the grit between your teeth. The taste doesn't matter. Warmth does. You feel it slide into your stomach like a small mercy. It's the first warmth you've felt since the fire last night. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand and look out at the camp again. The standards of the Legion stand motionless in the wind, the red cloth stiff with frost. Beyond them, the forest looms. Dark, silent, indifferent. Somewhere out there, the enemy might be watching. But no one's thinking about that now. The only enemy that matters in this moment is the cold. One of the younger soldiers near you coughs, a wet, heavy sound that doesn't stop. He leans forward, spits into the snow, and wipes his mouth. The spittle freezes before it hits the ground. No one says anything. They all know what that cough means. If it doesn't kill him, it'll spread. But there's no doctor here. Just herbs, superstition, and endurance. The centurion passes by, cloak whipping in the wind, shouting for the men to form ranks. His face is red from the cold, his beard crusted with ice. You stand because standing is safer than being seen sitting. The men gather in a rough line, shield on their backs, spears at their sides. The orders are the same as yesterday. Patrols, fortification, watch shifts. You listen, not because the words change, but because you have to. The rhythm of obedience is the only thing keeping the Legion from falling apart. As the formations break, you feel your limbs slowly coming back to life, the ache settling into something familiar. The morning is routine. You stomp your feet, swing your arms, anything to keep moving. Still the cold seeps in. It's not something you fight. It's something you learn to live with. It gets into your joints, your teeth, your thoughts. You can feel it behind your eyes. It becomes part of you. You pass rows of tents, each one nearly identical. Inside, men are packing gear, tightening straps, checking weapons. The smell of oiled metal cuts through the air. The centurions bark orders, but it's all mechanical now. The men barely need to be told. They know what comes next. They always do. The army doesn't stop for winter. Rome never stops for weather. The empire moves forward, one frost-bitten step at a time. Somewhere in the distance, a cart creaks. The mules pulling it are thin, their breath steaming in the air. They're hauling supplies, grain, tools, maybe more tents. The wheels squeal as they grind over frozen ruts. The driver's wrapped in furs, his face hidden. He looks less like a man and more like another ghost drifting through the white haze. You look at him and think briefly of home, though the thought feels dangerous. Rome, the city itself, is a world away. Warm, loud, crowded. There, fires burn for comfort, not for survival. The food is hot, the beds are dry. But those things feel imaginary now, like stories told by men who've never had to sleep in the snow. The Legion's home is wherever it's ordered to be. And tonight, home will be another patch of frozen ground. Another sleepless night inside a tent that smells like 10,000 other miserable tents before it. The sun creeps higher, though it gives no warmth. The sky brightens to a dull silver. You can hear the metallic rhythm of hammers striking iron as blacksmiths work on damaged weapons, their tools ringing like brittle bells. Somewhere, a soldier curses as he tries to start another fire. The wind carries the sound of Latin, clipped and harsh, words bouncing off the ice as if even language struggles to survive here. You pull your cloak tighter and keep moving, because movement means blood, and blood means life. Around you, the camp begins to shift, to come alive in its disciplined way. Men march to their posts, repair walls, clean weapons, boil grain. The camp is a living machine, grinding forward against the cold. You glance down at your hands, red and cracked, shaking slightly as you pull the cloak around your shoulders again. The morning frost still clings to the edges of your tunic. You breathe into your hands once more, watch the steam drift away, and think of nothing. Thinking too much makes the cold worse. This is how a Roman soldier wakes up in winter. No trumpets of glory, no hero's warmth. Just the discipline of habit, the sound of orders, and the numbness that fills the space where comfort should be. And as you walk toward the next duty, your boots crunching through the frozen mud, you know that tonight it'll all happen again. The same tent, the same cold, the same hope that you'll still wake to see another pale dawn. The march always begins the same way, with the sound of orders echoing through the mist. It doesn't matter that the ground is frozen solid, or that every man in the Legion looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. The rhythm of Rome doesn't care about exhaustion. It moves forward, whether the men beneath its banners can keep up or not. You pull your cloak tighter around your neck as the call to assemble rolls across the camp. The sound blends with the clatter of shields, the snapping of leather straps, the groaning of carts. The cold morning turns to chaos, but it's an organised chaos, the kind the Romans turned into an art form. Your fingers barely work as you fasten your belt and check your gear. The gladius, short and heavy at your side, feels colder than ice. The metal bites your skin through the glove as you touch it. Your scutum, the broad rectangular shield, leans against the tent wall, rim coated with frost. You hoist it onto your arm, and the familiar weight drags at your shoulder. You've done this every day for months, and it never feels easier. The burden of Rome is literal. The pack on your back holds everything that keeps you alive. Food, spare sandals, tools, a stake for building fortifications, a cloak that doubles as your blanket, a cooking pot that smells permanently of boiled barley, and a few personal things that remind you why you keep going. For most men, that's a small charm, a letter from home, or a coin worn smooth from being rubbed between their fingers at night. When the centurion shouts the command to form up, you move without thinking. Muscle memory takes over where willpower ends. You fall into line among 1,000 others, faces grey with cold, expressions blank. The wind cuts across the camp, carrying the scent of smoke and wet leather. The snow crunches under boots, a sound so constant it almost becomes silent. You glance sideways. Everyone looks the same, wrapped in cloaks, heads bowed, breath rising in unison like an army of ghosts. The march begins with a single sound, the crack of the Tesserarius' staff as he signals the front line to move. The legion starts walking in perfect rhythm, the ground trembling beneath the weight of iron and determination. The sound of hobnailed sandals striking the frozen road merges into one endless drumbeat. Every step drives the chill deeper into your bones. The wind stings your face, sneaking under the edge of your helmet. Your nose runs, but you don't bother wiping it. You just keep moving. The path ahead stretches through forest and frost, disappearing into grey distance. The trees lean inward, heavy with snow, their branches creaking under the weight. The road isn't really a road, more a line of churned mud frozen into ridges sharp enough to cut through soles. The Romans pride themselves on their roads, but out here, far from the heart of the empire, it's mostly dirt and ice pretending to be civilization. You slip once, catching yourself with your spear before you fall. The man behind you doesn't even look up. Falling means nothing out here. You just get up and keep marching. You pass the remains of yesterday's camp. Blackened fire pits, patches of trampled ground, the faint outline of tents already swallowed by snow. Nothing remains of the hundreds of men who slept there except footprints slowly filling with frost. Rome leaves no roots in the soil, only scars. You can see your own breath trailing behind you like smoke from a dying candle. Each exhale feels heavier than the last. Hours blur together. The sun never rises properly, just hangs there, pale and cold, behind a sheet of cloud. Your legs burn. Your back aches beneath the weight of your pack. The straps dig into your shoulders, rubbing the skin raw. You shift it once, twice, but there's no comfortable way to carry 70 pounds of your life. You can feel the dampness seeping through your boots, the slow thaw of frost melting into mud. Every step squelches, every squelch freezes again moments later. It's a cycle that never ends. The centurion rides alongside for a while, mounted on a horse that looks almost as miserable as the men. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His presence alone keeps the formation tight. Rome doesn't tolerate stragglers. The discipline of the legion is as unyielding as the cold. You've seen what happens to men who fall behind. The standard bearer passes ahead, the golden eagle of the legion glinting faintly through the fog, its surface dulled by frost. You fix your gaze on it and keep walking. It's easier not to think when you have something to follow. At some point the order comes to halt. The sound moves through the line like a ripple. Shields stop clattering. The boots cease their pounding rhythm. The silence that follows is strange, almost violent in its suddenness. You drop your pack to the ground with a grunt. Your shoulders scream in relief, but only for a moment. You stand still, catching your breath, steam rising from your body. The air smells faintly of pine and smoke, but mostly of sweat trapped in wool. A signal horn sounds again, a short, low note. The men at the front begin to move toward the tree line. You realise this isn't a rest. It's just another order. The legate wants a temporary camp built before nightfall. The sun might be useless for warmth, but it's still the clock the army lives by. You groan quietly and pick up your pack again. There's no use complaining. In the Roman army, there's no such thing as stopping, only different kinds of moving. The site chosen for the new camp is a clearing near a frozen stream. It looks peaceful at first glance, but every veteran knows peace is just another word for not yet attacked. The men start dividing into squads automatically. Some grab spades and picks to dig the defensive ditch. Others start in measuring the lines for tents. You're assigned to the wall detail, which means hacking into frozen earth until your hands feel like they're no longer attached to your body. You drive the spade down again and again, each strike sending a jolt up your arms. The soil doesn't want to move. It's half stone, half ice. After a few minutes, your breath comes in ragged gasps. Your palms burn despite the numbness. The sound of hundreds of men digging, hammering, shouting orders, and cursing in Latin fills the clearing. It's the sound of empire in motion. By midday, a faint snow begins to fall again. It doesn't melt, just clings to cloaks and helmets like dust. You can't tell if your fingers are bleeding or just too cold to care. The ditch is half finished. The men beside you move slower now, their rhythm faltering. The centurion's whip cracks through the air, not to punish, but to remind. A lash of sound that snaps the legion back into movement. No one questions it. The whip is as much a tool as the spade. When the work finally stops, your body feels hollow. The camp has taken shape. Trenches dug, stakes driven, tents aligned in perfect order. The same geometry Rome imposes everywhere it goes. You can't help but admire it, even while hating it. There's something cruelly beautiful about the precision. Every tent facing the same way. Every fire pit measured to the same depth. It's civilization carved out of misery. You drop onto a log near the edge of the camp and pull off your helmet. Steam rises from your hair. Sweat freezes instantly against your neck. Your lips are cracked, your hands red and raw. One of your comrades passes by, carrying a bundle of wood for the fires. He grins faintly, teeth chattering. "Warm tonight," he mutters, voice flat with irony. You snort a weak laugh. Humour here is currency, traded in moments before exhaustion takes it back. The wood goes fast once the fires start. Thin smoke rises into the grey sky, joining the snow as it falls. You sit close enough to feel the faint warmth against your face. It's barely enough to thaw your hands, but you hold them there anyway, watching the skin slowly change from white to red. The smell of burning pine mixes with the stink of sweat and oiled leather. It's terrible and comforting at once. Someone starts boiling water in a blackened pot. The rations today are the same as yesterday. Grain, a few dried vegetables, maybe a strip of salted pork if the quartermaster is generous. The Legion isn't built for pleasure, it's built for endurance. You take your share when it comes, eating slowly, not because it's good, but because it's warm. The heat fills your stomach, spreading upward just enough to fool your body into thinking it's alive again. When the brief meal ends, you know the day isn't done. The legate orders a patrol before nightfall to check the perimeter and scout the forest. You join one of the groups, adjusting the strap on your shield, the weight of the gladius slapping lightly against your thigh. The snow crunches underfoot as you move through the trees. Every branch creaks. Every gust of wind sounds like footsteps. The forest feels alive, and not in a comforting way. You keep your eyes forward, the iron edge of discipline dulling the edge of fear. By the time you return, the light is dying. The fires burn brighter now, circles of orange flickering against a world of grey. Men huddle close together, sharing warmth the way they share everything, reluctantly but without question. You find your tent again, the same stiff leather shell, and duck inside. The ground is already frozen, but you spread your cloak anyway, arranging the straw with your boots to make it less cruel. The air inside smells faintly of smoke and sweat, but compared to the outside, it almost feels like home. You sit down heavily, rubbing your calves through the wool of your trousers. They ache from the day's march, from the digging, from existence itself. You can hear laughter faintly from somewhere else in the camp. Forced, short-lived, but real enough to remind you that people still exist beneath the armour. Someone nearby is humming a tune, something old and Roman, maybe from the streets of the city, maybe from a village long gone. It blends with the crackle of the fires and the low murmur of voices until it becomes just another part of the night. The centurion passes by the tents once more, making sure the watch is set. You can see his shadow against the snow, the outline of authority moving through the dark. The legion sleeps under his eye, under Rome's eye. You lie back on the rough straw, staring up at the leather roof of the tent. The frost there glimmers faintly in the firelight, leaking through the seams. Every exhale turns into a cloud above you. You pull your cloak up to your chin and close your eyes. The warmth of the day, what little there was, is already fading. Your muscles twitch from fatigue, but your mind won't rest. You think of tomorrow, of more marching, more digging, more orders shouted into the wind. The idea of spring feels like a myth. Out here, there are only seasons of endurance. You roll onto your side, pulling the cloak tighter, listening to the camp's rhythm settle into silence. Somewhere beyond the walls, a wolf howls, a long, low sound that cuts through the cold. No one stirs. The men are too tired to care. The howling blends into the wind until it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. You drift in and out of half-sleep, hovering in that space between waking and forgetting. This is what the march has taught you, that the world doesn't stop. Not for cold, not for pain, not for the thousands of men grinding through mud and snow in service to a city they'll never see again. The empire moves forward, and you move with it, step after step, heartbeat after heartbeat, until all that's left is the sound of sandals on frozen ground, and in the faint hope that tomorrow's road will be shorter. The snow keeps falling, soft and relentless, until even the fires seem to surrender to it. And as the night settles in, the camp grows quiet once more, waiting for another dawn that will look exactly like this one, grey, cold, and filled with the orders of men who have forgotten what warmth feels like. The tent looks like shelter from a distance, but up close, it's just another form of endurance. It's made from thick panels of leather, stitched together with gut and reinforced by wooden poles that creak in the wind. The Romans call it the papilio, the butterfly, because of how it spreads open and closes when packed away. There's nothing delicate about it. Each one weighs nearly 40 kilograms, soaked through with animal grease to keep out the rain. But in the cold, the grease hardens, turning the walls into frozen slabs that crack when struck. When you crawl inside, it smells like every night that came before. Smoke, sweat, wet wool, and the faint rot of something that once lived and died a long time ago. You share this space with 7 other men. That number never changes. The Roman army is built on symmetry, and even misery is standardized. 8 men to a tent, 8 to a mess unit, 8 to carry, cook, and suffer together. The same faces, the same voices, every night, every march, every winter. You know each man by the sound of his breathing, by the way he shifts in his sleep, by the smell of his cloak when it's hung too close to yours. Privacy doesn't exist here. Neither does comfort. You learn to sleep in layers, not of blankets, but of fatigue and resignation. The ground is the first enemy. Frozen earth feels like stone, and no matter how much straw you spread, it never softens. You lie on it anyway, feeling every ridge press into your spine, the cold seeping up until your bones ache like they're turning to iron. The straw helps only for the first hour. After that, it's crushed flat, damp with sweat and melting frost. You can't wash it. You can't replace it often enough. You just learn to stop caring. The smell of decay is part of the routine. Inside the tent, the air is heavy and stale. Breath gathers near the top, condenses on the leather, and drips down in slow, freezing drops that land on your face at random intervals. You stop flinching after the first few nights. It's easier to let it happen. The men sleep in rows, cloaks pulled over their heads, bodies curled inward like animals conserving heat. The lucky ones manage to keep their feet near the small brazier in the centre, though the fire is almost nothing, just a handful of coals glowing faintly in a shallow pan. The smoke escapes through the flap, if the wind is right. If not, it lingers, making your eyes burn and your lungs itch. You shift closer to the man beside you, feeling the faint warmth radiating from his body. It's the only heat that really matters. The Roman army runs on proximity. You share warmth the way you share food, water, and silence. There's no shame in it. Even the proudest veteran will press against another when the frost sets in. Dignity means less than survival. The smell doesn't bother you anymore. Everyone smells the same, like smoke and leather and a life without soap. The tent walls tremble as the wind howls across the camp. You can hear it clawing at the seams, forcing its way through the stitching. And the sound never stops. It's a living thing that moves through the night, rattling the poles, testing the ropes, whispering through the cracks. Sometimes it feels like the whole structure might lift away, carrying you with it. You keep a hand on the wooden post beside you, not for support but for reassurance. Proof that something solid still exists in the world outside your skin. Sleep doesn't come easily. It never does. The ground steals it. The cold mocks it. The constant noise of men shifting, coughing, and muttering in dreams drags you in and out of it until you're not sure if you're resting or just lying still between shivers. Some of the younger recruits whimper softly in their sleep. You remember when you used to do that too, back when the idea of a campaign felt like an adventure instead of a punishment. The veterans don't make a sound. They've learned the art of stillness, breathing shallow, conserving warmth, refusing to waste energy on comfort. Every so often, a shout breaks through the camp, a sentry calling the watch, a horse startled by the wind, the groan of a tree bending under ice. The noise travels through the leather walls like a muffled heartbeat, reminding you that the world outside hasn't frozen entirely. You close your eyes and try to imagine being anywhere else. A home in the city, the warmth of a hearth, the smell of bread instead of boiled barley. But memory fades quickly in the cold. The longer you march, the less real the past feels. Rome becomes an idea instead of a place, a distant warmth you chase but never reach. The tent isn't meant for comfort. It's meant for discipline. It keeps the men together, forces them to rely on one another. It reminds them that they're not individuals, but parts of a machine that doesn't care about the feelings of its components. The leather roof is Rome, heavy and indifferent, pressing down on everyone equally. You hate it and need it at the same time. Without it, you'd freeze to death before morning. With it, you just freeze slower. Someone stirs beside you, pulling his cloak tighter. You hear a muffled cough, then the faint clink of a flask being opened. The smell of cheap wine fills the air. The man takes a sip and passes it along. You drink too, the liquid sharp and sour but warm enough to cut through the numbness for a few seconds. You hand it to the next man without speaking. No one thanks anyone. Gratitude isn't necessary when survival is shared. The flask makes its way down the line and disappears into the dark again. You roll onto your back and stare at the ceiling. The firelight flickers across the leather, shadows dancing in slow motion. The smoke curls in lazy spirals before vanishing into the seams. You can hear faint laughter from another tent. Someone telling a story, probably the same one they told last week, maybe about a woman in Rome, or a victory that never happened. The sound doesn't bother you. It's proof that the men are still human. In the morning they'll be soldiers again, but for now, they're just voices in the dark, trying to remember what warmth feels like. You reach into your pack and pull out a small piece of bread. It's hard as stone, the crust flaking into dust when you bite it. It tastes like nothing. You chew slowly anyway, because chewing feels like living. The hunger is constant, low and dull, like an old wound that never closes. The rations never change. Grain, dried meat, sour wine. The sameness becomes a kind of comfort in its own right. Predictability means you've survived long enough to notice the pattern. Your stomach grumbles softly. The man beside you shifts again, mumbling something half-formed. You can't make out the words. It doesn't matter. You close your eyes again and focus on the sound of breathing around you, the rise and fall of 8 men caught in the same frozen rhythm. The fire crackles once, then fades. A drop of melted frost lands on your forehead. You wipe it away, sigh quietly, and pull your cloak higher. The wind outside picks up, slamming against the tent. The poles groan, the ropes strain, and for a moment you think the whole thing might collapse. It doesn't. The Romans built these tents to last through anything. Storms, snow, battles and boredom. They're ugly, heavy and unyielding, like the empire itself. When the gust passes, the silence that follows feels heavier than before. The cold presses in, wrapping itself around every exposed surface. You curl tighter, nose buried in the folds of your cloak, and breathe slow to conserve heat. Time stretches in strange ways here. You don't know how long you've been lying there. Minutes, hours, maybe half the night. The darkness outside never changes, and the only clock you trust is your own heartbeat. You drift in and out of shallow dreams, half aware of the world, half lost in the ache of your muscles. When you wake again, your body feels like wood, stiff and uncooperative. You turn your head and see a faint glow near the door. Someone's opened the flap to check the fire. A slice of grey dawn leaks in, cutting through the smoke and showing the outlines of the men around you. Their faces are pale, lips blue, eyes sunken. They look like statues left too long in the cold. The one nearest the entrance stirs the coals, coaxing a weak flame back to life. The firelight crawls across the tent walls, revealing the stains, the patches, the marks left by years of use. These tents have seen more winters than most of the men inside them. You wonder how many soldiers before you slept under the same roof, breathed the same smoke, whispered the same curses into the dark. The tent doesn't care. It shelters whoever the Empire tells it to. The man at the fire adds a small stick, watches it burn for a moment, then closes the flap again. The glow fades, and the world shrinks back into half-light. The air inside grows warmer by a degree, maybe 2, but it's enough to feel like victory. You stretch your legs cautiously, the joints cracking in protest. The straw shifts under you with a faint crunch. You stare at the tent roof again, tracing the pattern of seams with your eyes until they blur. When you finally sit up, your cloak falls away, and the cold bites at your neck. You shiver once, hard, then reach for your boots. They're as stiff as they were the night before. You rub them between your hands, trying to loosen the leather. It doesn't work, but the motion keeps the blood flowing. You slip them on anyway, grimacing as your toes meet the icy insides. Around you, the others are waking too, groaning softly, coughing, pulling on armour that's cold enough to sting bare skin. No one complains out loud. Complaining doesn't warm you, and it doesn't stop the day from coming. When the flap opens again, a blast of frozen air rushes in, scattering smoke and frost. The centurion's voice calls from outside, sharp and unwavering. Time to rise, time to move, time to pretend the night wasn't as long as it felt. You stand slowly, your body creaking like old timber. You fold your cloak, shaking off the ice that's gathered along the edges, and pack it away. The straw stays behind, flattened and darkened with moisture. Someone will sweep it out later. Or maybe not. It doesn't matter. The tent will be taken down soon, folded, and carried to the next patch of frozen earth. You step outside into the pale morning, blinking against the light. The camp is already alive. Fires flicker between rows of tents, men moving like shadows in the mist. The air smells of smoke, iron, and the faint sweetness of pine from the woods nearby. You pull your cloak around you and exhale slowly, watching the breath drift upwards like a small offering to the indifferent sky. Behind you, the tent flaps rustle in the wind, the leather stiff and dark with frost. You know you'll be back inside it tonight, wrapped in the same smell, lying on the same ground, listening to the same wind claw at the seams. It's not comfort, it's endurance, and that's enough. The tent stands because the soldiers do, and the soldiers stand because Rome tells them to. You adjust your belt, tighten the strap of your shield, and turn toward the sound of the morning trumpet calling the legion to order. The camp begins to move, as 1,000 men preparing to march through another day of cold, hunger, and duty. The tent behind you fades into the background, blending into the rows of others until it's just another piece of leather in a world of frost and discipline. The ground crunches underfoot as you join the formation. The day feels identical to the one before it, and you already know how it will end. With the same tent, the same fire, the same fight for sleep. The wind cuts across your face, sharp and dry. You lower your head and keep walking, the smell of smoke still clinging to your cloak, the memory of the night lingering like a weight you can't put down. The cold will return tonight, just as it always does. But for now, there's only the march, the sound of sandals striking frozen ground, and the slow heartbeat of an empire that never stops moving, no matter how many of its soldiers freeze along the way. By the time night falls again, the camp is ready, and every man is already counting the hours until sleep, even if they know it won't bring rest. The sky darkens fast in winter, swallowing the horizon in grey before the last shovelful of earth is packed down around the ditches. The wind settles lower, heavier, carrying the promise of another freezing night. The fires start early, not because they bring much warmth, but because light is the only comfort left. Without it, the world turns into a silent expanse of snow, mud, and fear. You're kneeling near one of the pits, coaxing the coals to life with your breath. The wood hisses from the moisture, sending out small bursts of sparks that vanish instantly into the air. Your hands are numb, fingers slow, but the routine is familiar. You feed the fire carefully, arranging the logs in a neat pyramid, the way you were taught. The heat builds slowly, barely enough to fight the cold, pressing from every side. You extend your palms toward it, savouring the moment when sensation creeps back into your skin. The ache first, then the sting, then the warmth. It's almost painful how good it feels. Around you, men move through the dim light like shadows, silent, efficient, each one wrapped in a cloak that's half blanket, half armour against the wind. The sound of tools fades as the last of the fortifications are finished. The camp tightens, becomes still. From above, it must look like a grid of flickering orange dots surrounded by black. The order of Rome, stamped into the wilderness. Inside each small circle of light, soldiers huddle over fire pits, eating, repairing gear, or just staring into the flames, waiting for the night to pass. Your mess group gathers near you. 8 men, always the same 8, bound together by orders more than friendship. Someone hands you a bowl of pottage. The word feels too generous for what it really is. Barley boiled in water with a few scraps of salted pork floating like trophies. The steam rises in thin wisps. You hold the bowl close to your face, not just for the food, but for the heat it gives off. The first mouthful burns your tongue. You don't care. You swallow it too fast. Feel it sink into your stomach like a stone. It's not satisfying, but it's something to fill the space where hunger lives. The others eat in silence. The only sound is the faint scrape of spoons on wood. Afterward, there's little to do but wait for the signal to sleep. The cold has already crept back into your hands. You rub them together, breath steaming into the air. The smell of the camp is everywhere. Smoke, sweat, damp wool, and the earthy stench of wet soil. It sticks to your clothes, your skin, your hair. It becomes the background of existence. You barely notice it anymore. Someone passes around a flask of wine. It's thin, sour, probably mixed with water, but it burns going down and makes the cold feel softer for a while. One of the veterans mumbles a story about a campaign in Gaul, about rain that lasted for 40 days and turned the camps into lakes of mud. The others half listen, half stare at the fire. No one laughs. The humour in these stories died long ago. They're told now like rituals, reminders that suffering isn't new, that it has history. Eventually, the call for silence rolls through the camp. A deep voice, carrying from the centurion's post. The fires are tamped down, the wine flasks stop moving, and one by one the men retreat into their tents. The darkness grows heavier, pressing close. You take one last look at the fire, now a low orange glow, then turn away. The cold grabs you immediately. You pull your cloak tight and duck through the flap. Inside, the air is thick with breath and smoke. The brazier in the middle still holds a few faint coals, glowing like dying eyes. The others are already lying down, boots off, cloaks pulled high, forming a long line of shapes under the flickering light. You unroll your own bedding, a thin mat of straw, flattened from use, and spread it beside them. The straw crackles faintly, rough and uneven, bits of it poking through the fabric of your cloak. You lie down carefully, pulling your cloak around your shoulders. It doesn't take long before the cold finds its way through anyway. You shift closer to the man next to you, feeling the brush of his arm against yours. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. You can hear breathing, steady, slow, heavy. In the corner, someone coughs quietly, then goes still. Another man mutters something in his sleep. A name maybe, too low to catch. The sounds blend into a single rhythm. The collective pulse of men trying to stay alive by pretending they're asleep. Your face is the only part left exposed, and it feels like it's being carved by the air itself. You pull the cloak higher, burying your nose in the fabric. It smells like wool, smoke, and salt. You exhale into it, trapping the warmth for a second before it slips away. The trick is to breathe slowly, shallowly, so you don't lose too much heat. Everyone learns it after their first winter. You fall into the pattern, inhale, hold, exhale, listening to the wind outside scrape against the tent like sandpaper. There's a rule, unspoken but universal. Never sleep too far from the next man. Even enemies can't pierce that small wall of shared heat. If someone shifts away in the night, they're pulled back without a word. You remember the first time you woke up half a metre apart, your legs stiff, your teeth chattering so hard you thought they'd crack. After that, you stopped caring about pride. You learned to sleep close, shoulder to shoulder, every breath overlapping with another's. The cold plays tricks on time. You can't tell if hours pass or minutes. Your mind drifts, floating between exhaustion and awareness. You think of warmth, not the abstract kind, but specific things. The way sun feels on a stone wall, the smell of bread just pulled from an oven, the sound of a crowded market in summer. They feel like memories from another life. The empire might still exist, but Rome, the city of heat and noise, feels like a story told to someone else. A drop of condensation falls from the tent ceiling, hits your cheek, and runs down your face. It's freezing. You wipe it away without opening your eyes. The coals in the brazier crack softly. The faint glow flickers, painting the inside of the tent in shifting reds and browns. The air tastes of ash. You shift your feet closer to the warmth, feeling the straw crunch under your boots. Someone stirs. A soft murmur, followed by movement. One of the men near the entrance gets up quietly, wrapping his cloak tighter around him. He crouches near the brazier, adds a few small twigs from his pack. The fire crackles briefly, then steadies. The light grows stronger for a moment, painting his face, sharp lines, hollow cheeks, eyes that look far older than the years written on them. He watches the flame like it might offer an answer. Then he settles back down, lying on his side, facing the heat. No one thanks him. Everyone noticed, but no one speaks. Silence is its own form of gratitude here. The warmth spreads slightly. You feel it touch your hands, faint and fleeting, but enough to loosen the tension in your chest. You breathe easier for a few minutes. Outside, the wind shifts direction, whistling through the seams. Snow drifts against the walls, piling higher. You can hear the faint hiss of flakes hitting the leather. Steady, rhythmic, endless. In moments like this, the tent feels like a fragile bubble keeping death just barely out. The difference between life and the coal beyond the flap is measured in a few layers of cloth, a handful of coals, and the breath of 7 men. You think about how ridiculous that is, how fragile it all seems. Then you stop thinking, because thought takes warmth too. You focus on the rhythm again. Inhale, hold, exhale, and on the weight of the cloak pressing down on you like a second skin. At some point, you drift toward real sleep, not deep, but heavy enough to dull the ache in your muscles. Your dreams, if they come, are fragments, flashes of firelight, the sound of waves on the Tiber, your mother's voice calling from a doorway you can't see. They vanish the moment you stir. You wake again when your arm goes numb, shift slightly, and then sink back into the shallow quiet of the night. The air grows colder as the hours pass. The coals fade again, light shrinking to embers. The glow turns from orange to dull red to nothing. You wake to the change without opening your eyes. You can feel it. The cold seeps back into the tent, creeping across the ground like a slow tide. The breathing around you becomes uneven, punctuated by the occasional shiver. Someone pulls the cloak tighter with a grunt. Another man turns over, his elbow brushing yours. You reach for your pack in the dark, find the spare piece of cloth you use as padding, and drape it over your legs. It's barely large enough to matter, but it helps a little. The cloth smells faintly of oil and iron. You tuck it under your knees and curl tighter, knees against your chest. The posture hurts, but it traps the warmth you have left. It's strange how quiet the camp becomes at night. The same place that roars with noise during the day falls completely still after sundown. The only sounds now are the occasional creak of the tent poles and the wind outside changing tone as it moves across the rows of leather roofs. It's not peaceful. Peace suggests choice. This silence is something heavier, the kind that settles over men too tired to dream. You open your eyes once, staring into the dark. You can just make out the shapes of your tent mates, bundled like mounds of shadow. You listen to their breathing, one steady, one wheezing, one slow and shallow. You know them all by rhythm now. If one stops, you'll notice. You'll wait for the next breath, and if it doesn't come, you'll know before anyone else. It's happened before. The cold takes without sound. A man falls asleep and doesn't wake. In the morning you move him gently aside, cover him, and close the tent flap like nothing changed. Then the camp marches on, but tonight everyone still breathes. You count them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 8. The air feels thick, almost solid. Your own breath comes slower. The cold no longer feels sharp. It's a dull, steady weight pressing against your chest, the kind you can almost mistake for calm. You close your eyes again and let it carry you back into half sleep. When dawn finally comes, it doesn't look any different than night. The same grey, the same wind, the same shiver crawling down your spine. But you're still breathing, and that means the trick worked again. Straw, cloaks, shared breath, the small, simple tools that keep men alive when the Empire's glory can't. You stretch slowly, joints cracking, feeling the stiffness give way. Around you, the others start to stir. No one speaks at first. There's no need. The silence says everything. Outside, the trumpets will sound soon. The fires will be relit, the tents folded, the march will start again. The night will be forgotten, folded up and carried on backs until it repeats itself somewhere else. But for now, in this brief space between exhaustion and orders, you just lie there, wrapped in smoke and wool, listening to the faint hiss of snow melting on the leather walls, and think about how survival has become its own form of obedience. You push yourself upright, rubbing your eyes, blinking at the faint light filtering through the seams. The tent feels smaller than it did last night, like it's closing in around you. You stand, stretch your legs, and feel the blood return in painful waves. The others rise too, moving slowly, faces pale and expressionless. One by one, they reach for their cloaks, their armour, their packs. You do the same. The smell of damp straw fills the air. When you step outside, the world is white again. The snow fell heavier than you thought. The ground is covered, soft at first glance, but hiding the frozen mud beneath. The camp is already stirring. Men shaking snow off their tents, stamping their feet, coughing into the morning air. You pull your cloak tighter and exhale a long plume of breath that hangs in front of your face. Another night, survived. Another morning that looks exactly like the last. You think briefly of how many more there will be before spring, but you stop yourself. Counting only makes it harder. You adjust your cloak, shift your shield, and walk toward the sound of the first orders of the day. The tents behind you are already fading into mist, the fires hissing under the weight of snow. The camp comes alive again, and the night, with all its closeness and quiet, slips back into memory. Another invisible battle won by men who never stop shivering long enough to notice. Fire is the one thing every man in the Legion dreams about, but it never burns the way he needs it to. The idea of it keeps you going through the march. The picture of red light flickering against the snow. Hands stretched out, faces glowing. A moment where the cold might finally surrender. But when night comes and the camp is built, the fire never delivers on its promise. It burns small, weak, resentful. It's rationed like everything else. You're kneeling beside one now, watching it struggle against the wind. The flames twist sideways, licking at the damp wood that refuses to catch. The logs are half rotten, pulled from a nearby grove where the snow still clings to the bark. You remember when you first learned how to light a campfire? In training, under a clean sky, dry wood, instructors shouting about efficiency and order. That fire had been a perfect circle of heat. Out here, it's smoke and frustration. A few sparks and a prayer that it lasts until midnight. The smoke stings your eyes, curls into your hair, settles in your throat. You cough, wave your hand, lean closer anyway. You can feel the heat only in flashes, a tease that disappears as soon as it reaches your skin. Around you, the rest of the camp is doing the same. Circles of men crouched low, faces hidden behind cloaks. Each group guarding its little flame like a secret. The air smells of damp ash and wet wool. You can hear the faint crackling of hundreds of fires, each one fighting its own losing battle against the cold. One of the younger soldiers tosses a handful of twigs into the pit. They flare for a second, then die with a hiss. He curses under his breath, rubbing his hands together furiously. His knuckles are cracked and raw, the skin split from cold. You pass him a fragment of pitch-soaked cloth, one of the few tricks everyone carries. He nods, stuffs it under the wood, and lights it with a spark from his flint. This time the fire catches. The men lean in, sighing almost in unison. The sound isn't relief exactly, but something close to it. You hold your palms near the flame. The skin tingles, stings, then starts to feel alive again. You flex your fingers, watch the light dance across the scars and grime. For a few moments, the fire becomes everything, a tiny world where pain fades, and the thought of warmth feels almost possible. The flicker reflects in the eyes of the men around you, all staring into it like it's the only god worth praying to tonight. Someone speaks softly. Remember when we used to have proper wood? It's half a joke, half a memory. Another man snorts. Proper wood burns too fast. The first one laughs once, dry and short, then coughs until his shoulders shake. The sound fades back into the crackle. Conversations in the cold always end the same way. Not with goodbyes, just silence that fills itself. You shift on your heels, reaching for the iron pot that hangs over the fire. It's filled with what passes for supper. Boiled grain again, thick and grey, a few floating scraps of dried onion. The smell isn't good, but it's familiar, which makes it almost comforting. You stir it with a stick, watch the surface bubble lazily. The fire's heat barely reaches your knees, but the pot steams anyway. When it's time to eat, you ladle the sludge into wooden bowls and pass them around. No one thanks anyone. Gratitude wastes energy. You sit back and take your own bowl, cupping it in both hands. The warmth seeps into your palms, steady and solid. You bring it to your lips, blow once, and take a sip. It burns your tongue, but you don't stop. The taste is nothing, but the heat is everything. You drink until the bowl's empty, wipe your mouth with the back of your glove, and set it down beside you. A few embers jump from the fire and die in the snow. The wind picks up again, carrying the smell of smoke across the camp. You look up and see the glow of other fires flickering through the mist, each one a small, trembling star in a field of darkness. The sight is strange, beautiful, in a way that doesn't feel right. Each flame is a promise that someone else is still awake, still alive, still fighting the same battle against the air. You think of how fragile it all is. One gust of wind, one careless footstep, and the fire goes out. Then it's just smoke and blackened wood, and the cold moves in like a thief. You've seen what happens when men lose their fire, how fast the frost claims them. The first sign is silence, then stiffness. By dawn, they're frozen where they lay, faces pale, hands curled, as if still reaching for the warmth that slipped away. You remember a night like that 2 winters ago, in a different campaign. The snow had fallen thicker, the wind louder. The fire refused to stay lit. You'd huddled together in a half-collapsed tent, watching your breath turn to mist in the dark. One of the new recruits, a boy barely old enough to shave, had fallen asleep too far from the coals. No one noticed until morning. When they pulled the cloak from his face, his eyes were still open, rimmed with frost. No one spoke about it. The camp just moved on. The fire burned that night too, just not for him. You poke the current fire with a stick, stirring the coals, sending up a small shower of sparks. The glow reflects off your armour, dull and uneven. You can see your breath above it, rising in short bursts. The heat has already started to fade again. You add another log. Watch the flames swallow it slowly, reluctantly. The wood hisses like it's arguing with you. You wait. You always have to wait. Nothing happens quickly in the cold. Someone behind you clears his throat. Centurion says we're moving again tomorrow. His voice is low, tired. Another groan answers him. In this, the roads are half ice. The first man shrugs. Orders. That word ends the discussion. Orders are the only thing heavier than the cold. They crush argument without effort. You look at the fire again. The flames lean sideways with the wind. You shift to block it with your body, hunched over like a shield. The warmth touches your face. Your nose burns slightly. And for a moment you forget where you are. You could be anywhere. A farmhouse, a tavern, even home. You let yourself imagine it just long enough to remember that warmth doesn't last. The wind finds its way through every gap. The heat slips away through every seam. It's the one thing the Legion never truly mastered, keeping the cold out. A spark lands on your boot, flares, dies. You brush the ash away absently. The man across from you leans forward, his face glowing red from the light. His eyes are glassy, distant. I used to think the cold was quiet, he says, a voice barely above a whisper. It isn't. You can hear it. It crawls. It breathes. You nod, because he's right. The cold has a sound, a low hiss, a faint hum. The rustle of fabric stiffening with frost. Once you've heard it, you can't unhear it. The fire pops suddenly, throwing sparks into the air. The men flinch, then laugh quietly. Even danger feels better than silence. You can see your breath again, thicker now, mingling with the smoke. The night around the camp feels alive, not with movement, but with pressure. The air itself seems to lean inward, listening. You feed the fire again, not because it needs it, but because doing something feels better than doing nothing. The hours stretch. The fire burns lower. The men start to drift away, one by one, back to their tents. You stay a little longer, watching the last log turn black. The embers glow deeper. It's a strange sort of companionship, sitting with something that's dying but still warm. You use your boot to nudge the ashes into a pile, trying to keep the heat contained. It doesn't work for long. The glow fades, the smoke thickens, the light dims until all that's left are faint orange veins in the dark. You know it's time to go, but leaving a fire feels wrong. It's like turning your back on something living. You squat there another minute, hand extended, feeling the last ghost of warmth on your palm. The air beyond the circle is sharp and empty. The fire finally sighs, collapses in on itself, and dies. You stand slowly, brushing the frost off your knees. The world feels bigger without the light, colder too. The stars above are faint, half hidden by mist. You can see the outlines of other men walking between tents, their shadows long, their breath clouding in front of them. The camp has gone quiet again, the kind of quiet that presses on your ears until you think you can hear your own blood moving. You turn toward your tent, your boots crunching in the snow. The ground glows faintly from the reflection of the moon on ice. You pass by another fire still burning, smaller than yours but alive. A few men sit close, hunched in silence. One looks up and nods. You nod back. No words. Just the shared understanding of what it means to guard something fragile in a world that wants to put it out. When you duck inside your tent, the air feels thicker, almost warmer by comparison. The others are already asleep, cloaks pulled over their heads. You crawl to your spot, drop your pack, and sit for a moment, letting your breath slow. You can still smell the smoke in your hair, on your hands, in your clothes. It follows you everywhere, the scent of survival. You stretch out on the straw, pull your cloak tight, and close your eyes. The heat from the fire is already fading from your skin, leaving only the memory of it behind. Faint, almost imagined. Outside, the last sparks die in the snow, one after another. The wind sweeps over the camp, scattering ash, flattening the smell of smoke until it's just another layer of cold. The night deepens, the cold grows thicker, and the men sleep beneath their cloaks, dreaming of fires that actually burned bright enough to be remembered. The silence that follows isn't peace. It's simply what remains when the last warmth runs out. The camp holds its breath. The Empire sleeps, if you can call it that, under the same indifferent sky, waiting for the next dawn, the next march, the next chance to build another fire that will never be enough. By the time the last orders fade and the night finally settles, the armour feels heavier than your body. It's been on you since before dawn. Metal, leather, and grit pressed against skin for hours that don't have names anymore. Every step, every movement has rubbed it deeper into you, until it feels less like protection and more like punishment. Now comes the part everyone pretends to look forward to: taking it off. You unbuckle the straps one by one, fingers slow from cold and exhaustion. The plates come loose with dull clicks, stiff from frost and sweat. You lift the cuirass over your head and set it down beside your bedroll. The air hits your tunic immediately, icy, sharp, like 1,000 needles on bare skin. The relief of release lasts only a second before the chill drives into the sweat, still clinging to you. You shiver, rub your arms, try to warm yourself by friction alone. The armour on the ground gleams faintly in the firelight from outside. The edges are crusted with dried mud, the surface etched with scratches that look almost deliberate. Every mark is a story you can't remember clearly anymore. A skirmish, a stumble, a week-old scrape. You tell yourself you'll polish it tomorrow, knowing you probably won't. There's no time and no point. The armour always goes back on before it's clean. Around you, the others do the same. The tent fills with the clatter of metal, the sigh of leather giving way, the low grunts of men bending down after a day that bent them in return. One man curses softly as his buckle snaps. Another laughs, dry and without humour. The sound of armour being shed is like a chorus of relief, rough, uncoordinated, too tired to mean joy. Beneath the metal, everyone smells the same. Sweat trapped in wool, salt crusted on skin, the sour tang of old leather mixed with the faint rot of damp fabric. It's a smell that doesn't wash out. It becomes the scent of the Legion itself. You sit back and breathe through your mouth, not to escape it, but because breathing through your nose burns. The tunic beneath is soaked through, sticking to your chest and back. You peel it away just enough to let air touch your skin. The cold makes you gasp. You'd think you'd be used to it by now, but the body never adjusts to this kind of life. It just learns how to endure it longer. You rub at the bruises on your shoulders where the straps bit in. They've turned a deep purple, merging into the stains from yesterday's cuts. You've stopped feeling most of it. The pain blends together until it's part of the rhythm. You lay the armour out carefully, piece by piece, because leaving it disordered is bad luck. The centurion says the gods favour discipline, and even if you don't believe it, habit wins. You wipe the condensation from your helmet with your sleeve, set it near your head. It'll freeze if left outside. The cold has a way of turning everything, even protection, into danger. Someone nearby starts talking softly about home. It's always the same pattern. A house near the hills? A woman who waits? A meal that didn't come from a pot of grain? You listen without meaning to. The words are half-truths, stretched by memory, made warmer by distance. You never tell your own story. There's no point. The silence feels safer. You stretch out on your straw bed again, your body sore, your muscles humming with dull exhaustion. The tunic clings to you, damp and heavy. You think briefly about changing it, then laugh quietly at the thought. There's only one. You'll sleep in it, wake in it, march in it. The smell will only get worse, but you stopped caring about that long ago. The man beside you rolls over, armour clinking faintly as he pushes it aside. He mutters a curse, then pulls his cloak over his head. You shift closer, more for habit than heat. The ground beneath you is as unkind as ever. Straw flattened, frozen patches beneath the layer of dirt. You feel every ridge through the thin fabric of your cloak. The cold crawls up through your spine and settles in your chest like another weight to carry. The tent breathes with you. The walls shift slightly with each gust of wind, the leather creaking, ropes groaning. The air smells of iron and men. You close your eyes and feel the sting of sweat drying on your skin. You try to remember what it felt like to be clean. You can't. The memory is gone, replaced by the constant ache of grime. The fire outside burns low. Its glow slips under the flap, thin and red, casting long shadows across the armour piled near the walls. The reflections look alive. Glimmers of movement where there shouldn't be any. You stare at them until they blur. The armour looks almost human in the dark, as if the men who wore it never really left it. You wonder if, one day, yours will look the same. Abandoned, empty, still smelling faintly of its last battle. You roll onto your side, pull the cloak tighter. The fabric rubs against the salt on your skin, rough enough to sting. You breathe through it, trying to ignore the itch spreading across your chest. The combination of sweat and wool feels like punishment. You scratch absently, stop when it starts to burn. You can't risk breaking the skin. Infections take faster than rumours in a winter camp. The cold creeps in again, slow and patient. You tuck your hands under your arms, curl your legs, make yourself smaller. The air inside the tent feels thick, humid from breath, but the heat never stays. You can feel the metal cooling beside you, drawing the warmth out of the ground, out of you. Every time the wind hits, the tent rattles, and the armour shivers with a faint metallic sigh, like it's alive and cold too. Sleep comes in pieces. You drift, wake, drift again. Each time you surface, you hear the faint breathing around you, the slow creak of leather, the distant crack of ice outside. You turn your head, look at the line of armour glinting in the dark, and feel both safer and smaller. The Empire built this shell for you to wear, and now it lies beside you like a silent reminder of who you are when you take it off. Just another body trying to survive the night. You think of the men who slept like this centuries before you, and the ones who will after. Nothing changes. The armour stays, the cold stays, the smell stays. You close your eyes again, let the ache fade into the background, and breathe in the thick air of iron and sweat until the night stops feeling endless. Outside, the wind never stops. The snow drifts higher, soft enough to bury tracks, but not the sound of the sentry's footsteps circling the camp. The fires shrink to red embers. Inside the tents, the soldiers sleep, wrapped in cloaks, surrounded by the ghosts of their own armour, dreaming of warmth they'll never quite reach. When the morning trumpet sounds again, It'll all begin once more. The cold metal on skin, the smell of sweat under leather, the slow ritual of becoming soldiers again. But for now, in this brief, shallow quiet, the armour rests, the men breathe, and the night presses on without mercy. The smell of the Legion is the first thing that reaches you every morning, before the light, before the wind, before even the sound of orders. It clings to everything: your cloak, your skin, the tent walls, the air you breathe. It's a mixture of smoke, damp wool, boiled grain, and the faint rot of bodies that have worked too hard for too long. The scent is as much a part of Roman life as the armour you wear or the language you speak. There's no escaping it. When you first joined the Legion, the smell had made you gag. Now you hardly notice. It's not that it's gone, it's that you've become part of it. The stink of thousands of men living, sweating, eating, and sleeping in close quarters has soaked into your very bones. When you remove your cloak at night, it smells like the campfire that burned last week. When you stretch your arms, your sweat smells like boiled grain and smoke. Even the air in your lungs feels used, passed through too many others before it reached you. This morning, as you step out of the tent, the cold hits first, sharp and clean. But beneath it, you can smell the camp coming alive again. Fires being lit with damp wood, leather straps heated to soften them, the faint sweetness of porridge cooking in iron pots. Smoke hangs low over the ground, drifting between the tents like a fog. It burns your nose and makes your eyes water, but it's strangely comforting. The smell means the Legion is awake, which means life, however hard, is continuing. A trumpet sound somewhere near the command post, the low note shivering through the air. You tighten your cloak and walk toward the communal fire where breakfast is being prepared. The mud crunches under your boots, frozen at the surface but soft beneath. Every step releases a faint smell of earth and decay. You pass rows of men doing the same thing, some rubbing their hands together for warmth, others holding bowls, waiting their turn in the endless line that winds around the cooking pits. At the centre of it all is the cook tent, a haze of steam and smoke rising from the cauldrons. The smell of barley dominates everything, heavy and sour, mixed with the occasional whiff of salted pork or dried onion. You've smelled this every day for months. It's the scent of survival, bland but dependable. The cook, a broad man with soot-streaked cheeks, stirs the thick mixture with a wooden paddle. It doesn't bubble much. The fire isn't strong enough, but it makes a low, slurping sound that echoes the rhythm of the camp. You hold out your bowl when it's your turn. The cook ladles a portion without looking at you. The steam hits your face, smelling of wet grain and smoke. You nod in thanks and step aside, letting the next man take your place. You crouch near the nearest fire and set the bowl in your lap. The warmth seeps into your legs through the wood. You blow on the porridge once, twice, then take a spoonful. It tastes exactly the way it smells, like boiled dust. The texture is thick and uneven, sometimes gritty from bits of unmilled barley. You chew slowly, not for pleasure but for patience. The warmth is the only thing that matters. Around you, the camp hums quietly. Men eat without talking much, their faces blank, steam rising from their bowls and cloaks alike. The fire crackles softly, sending up occasional sparks that die before they reach the air above the smoke. You hear the wet sound of a man clearing his throat, the scrape of a spoon against wood, the distant ring of a hammer striking metal where the blacksmith is already at work. The smells of food and industry blend together. Smoke and sweat, iron and ash. It's the perfume of empire. You swallow the last of your porridge and wipe your mouth with your sleeve. The wall smells faintly of burnt grease from last night's meal. The scent lingers even when you're clean, which isn't often. The cooks reuse the same pots every day, boiling one meal on top of the remains of the last. There's always a layer of something burned at the bottom, and that smell follows the legion wherever it goes. The smoke that seeps into your clothes isn't just from the fire. It's from 1,000 old meals cooked in desperation and discipline. Nearby, a group of men are mending their cloaks, sitting close to a pile of kindling. The smell of singed fabric drifts your way as one of them uses a small flame to seal the edge of a tear. The others joke quietly, their laughter dry and hoarse. You can't hear the words, but the sound alone carries a strange warmth, like the crackle of fire itself. It's one of the few things the Legion still allows that doesn't come from orders. As you stand, stretching your back, a gust of wind moves through the camp. The smoke swirls, mixing with the smell of men and mud. Somewhere behind you, a horse snorts. The scent of manure adds another layer to the mix. It's not pleasant, but it's alive. You can tell the state of a camp by its smell. A clean one is a dead one. If you ever wake to the scent of nothing, it means something terrible has happened. You'd take smoke and sweat over silence any day. You carry your bowl back to the supply cart, where the men rinse them in a bucket of icy water that smells faintly of ash. The surface is half frozen. You dip the bowl, swirl it once, and set it upside down on the snow to dry. The cold sterilizes everything better than soap ever could. You rub your hands together to shake off the water, the chill biting into your knuckles. The air smells sharper now, cleaner somehow, after the meal. For a brief moment, it almost feels new again, but it doesn't last. The smell of the camp settles back in, thick and heavy. It's not just from the fires or the food. It's from the people. The thousands of bodies that make up the Legion's living machine. Every man sweats, every cloak carries that sweat, every breath fills the air with it. It mixes with oil, with leather, with the faint rot of old straw and dying embers. The result is a kind of human fog that no wind can fully clear. You walk through it, past tents and carts, toward the outer wall of the camp where sentries are posted. The smell changes subtly here. Less smoke, more pine from the nearby woods, and something faintly metallic. The scent of wet iron from the piles of weapons stacked neatly along the perimeter. The air feels different too. Colder, sharper, almost clean if you breathe deep enough. You stand there for a while facing the forest, letting the wind cut through your hair and cloak. The cold steals your breath, but it also scrapes away the smell for a moment. You can almost pretend you're alone. Behind you, the camp continues its rhythm. Fires hiss, men cough, carts creak. The smell drifts back toward you, insistent and familiar. You turn and walk back into it without hesitation. That's the thing about the Legion. It binds you to everything you hate until you can't imagine life without it. Later, when evening comes, the smell grows thicker again. The fires are rekindled, the cooking starts anew. This time, it's lentils instead of barley, but it makes no difference. The air fills with the same sour, sweet haze. You help stir one of the pots, watching the bubbles rise lazily to the surface. The steam hits your face, damp and hot. You can taste the salt and smoke on your tongue even before you eat. The men gather close again, same as always. Someone tosses a handful of herbs into the pot, the rarest kind of generosity. The smell changes instantly, sharper, warmer, carrying a hint of something almost pleasant. A cheer goes up, quiet but real. You breathe it in deeply, closing your eyes for a moment. It's ridiculous how something so small can feel like victory. You ladle the food into bowls again, the steam curling around your hands. The firelight glows through the smoke, turning everything orange and gold. You sit down beside the others, legs crossed, bowl balanced on your knees. You take the first bite slowly, savouring it not for taste, but for temperature. The warmth spreads through you, the same way it always does. A reminder that you're still alive, still part of this endless, moving thing that smells like smoke and sweat and effort. When the meal is over, you lean back on your hands, staring into the fire. The smoke moves through the air like breath, rising, twisting, disappearing. You realise that every night smells exactly like this, and every night will continue to. The scent of the Legion doesn't wash away. It just moves with you. It's the smell of men who never stop marching, never stop burning what little they have to stay alive. Someone nearby starts polishing his armour, the oil adding a sharp tang to the mix. Another throws a damp cloak near the fire to dry, releasing a burst of sour steam that makes everyone groan. The smell doesn't bother you anymore. You're too tired to mind. You just pull your own cloak tighter, breathe through the smoke, and let it fill your lungs like air. The night deepens. The fires burn lower, releasing more smoke than heat. The camp settles into silence again, broken only by the occasional crackle or cough. You lie back on your cloak, staring up through the gaps in the tent wall, watching the faint glow of embers rise toward the stars. The air inside smells the same as it did when you woke. Smoke, wet wool, boiled grain, and the faint, unshakable scent of men who've spent too long in the same place doing the same thing. You breathe it in once more, slow and steady. It's not pleasant, but it's real. It's the smell of labour, of endurance, of survival. You know it will still be there in the morning, and the morning after that, and for as long as the Legion exists. Rome itself probably smells the same, just bigger, louder, and older. You smile faintly at the thought, though it feels more like an ache than amusement. You close your eyes, still tasting smoke on your tongue. Outside, the fires fade, the smell thickens, and the wind moves across the camp, blending everything together until the Legion becomes one single endless breath rising into the cold night. By the time the last light fades and the fires settle into their usual glow, hunger has already taken hold. It starts quietly, somewhere deep in the stomach, an ache that doesn't shout so much as gnaw. Every man feels it, but no one says a word. In the Legion, hunger isn't a surprise. It's part of the rhythm, like the march or the cold. You expect it, endure it, and hope that tonight's rations are enough to make the emptiness seem smaller for a while. You sit with your mess group near a dying fire. The smoke rises in lazy coils, the wood popping softly under its own weight. The air smells of barley and ash again, the scent of the same meal cooked in the same pot by the same tired hands. The portions are smaller now. The quartermaster says the supply train is late, or lost, or frozen somewhere beyond the mountains. The reasons don't matter. The result is the same. Less food, more silence. Someone passes you a small loaf of bread. It's cold, hard, and heavier than it looks. You take it with both hands, feeling the rough texture under your fingers. The crust is cracked and pale, dusted with flour that's turned grey from travel. You rap your knuckles against it out of habit. The sound is hollow, like wood. The inside will be dense and tough, but it's still food. You tear off a piece, the bread resisting you like it doesn't want to be eaten. It's dry enough to scrape your throat when you swallow. No one bothers to heat it anymore. The fires burn low, the wood is scarce, and the water's needed for more important things. You chew slowly, letting your saliva soften the bite. It doesn't work much, but it gives your jaw something to do. The bread tastes faintly sour, with the metallic aftertaste of the grain that's been stored too long. You can taste the smoke from the fire on your hands as you eat. It mixes with the flour, the salt from your skin, the faint bitterness of iron that never seems to wash away. The man beside you breaks his loaf in half, holding the smaller piece to the flame for a moment before biting it. It doesn't make it softer, just warmer. You watch him, then try the same. The crust blackens instantly, the smell turning sharp, acrid. You blow on it, shake off the ash, and take another bite. It's no better, but at least it's hot enough to trick your mouth for a moment. The fire snaps again, throwing brief sparks into the night. The sound fills the space where conversation should be. The men eat in silence, staring into the coals like they're trying to see something beyond them. Occasionally, someone sighs or clears his throat. The rest of the time, it's just the faint grind of teeth on bread, and the low moan of the wind moving between the tents. You remember the bread at home, soft, fresh, baked in ovens that smelled like life. Those memories used to comfort you. Now they make you angry. Thinking about warmth, about flavour, about abundance feels like cruelty. The bread you eat here isn't meant to taste good. It's meant to keep you alive. Rome doesn't care how it feels going down. It just cares that you can march tomorrow. You reach for your flask and take a small swallow of watered wine. It's lukewarm from being carried under your cloak all day, but it loosens the crumbs in your throat. The taste is sour, the kind of wine that burns more than it soothes. You swallow again and set the flask down carefully, the metal clinking softly against the ground. Around you, the men finish their meals in slow sequence. One wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. Another licks his fingers clean, more out of habit than satisfaction. A few still gnaw on the tougher edges of their loaves, unwilling to waste even the smallest scrap. Hunger teaches you to treat food like treasure, even when it looks like punishment. Someone near the fire cracks a joke about home, about feasts and roasted meat, about bread that bends when you tear it. A few men chuckle, weakly. The laughter fades before it even has time to sound real. You smile faintly anyway. Humour keeps the emptiness from spreading too far. When the bowls and flasks are empty, the fire becomes the only thing left to stare at. The orange light flickers across the men's faces, turning every shadow into a scar. You lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees. Your stomach has stopped aching. It's learned to settle for less. The cold is sharper now that the heat from eating has faded. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking your chin inside. The smell of wool and smoke fills your nose again. Familiar, unchanging. The night deepens. The fires burn lower. The last bits of wood reduce to glowing coals. The men start to drift toward their tents, some lingering longer than others. You stay where you are, watching the final flame flicker and fold inward. Hunger always returned after dark. not to the stomach, but to the mind. It comes in memories, roasted grain, honey, figs, the taste of olive oil on warm bread. You can almost smell it, even here, even now. It's cruel how the mind remembers flavour, even when the body forgets comfort. You break off the last bit of your loaf, roll it between your fingers. It's small enough to fit in your palm. You hesitate, then tuck it into a pouch for morning. Tomorrow's hunger will feel sharper, and a mouthful of anything will help. You pat the pouch once, a small gesture of reassurance. The others have done the same. You've seen men guard crumbs like gold, seen fights break out over scraps no bigger than a coin. Out here, food is currency, time and mercy, all at once. You stand slowly, knees stiff, back sore. The fire pit glows faintly red. You stamp your feet once to shake off the cold, then turn toward your tent. The ground crunches under your boots, frozen mud breaking beneath each step. The air is thick with the smell of extinguished smoke and damp fabric. The camp is almost quiet now, save for the distant crack of another log collapsing in some other fire. You pull back the flap and duck inside. The air inside the tent is heavier, close with the scent of men, wool and smoke. You find your place in the line of sleeping bodies and sit down, setting your pack beside you. The hunger returns immediately, a hollow feeling that isn't painful, just persistent. You pull the cloak around yourself and lie down. The straw rustles beneath you. You can still taste the bread on your tongue, dry, dusty, bitter. You close your eyes and think of warmth, not food. Thinking of food only makes it worse. You picture a full belly, a quiet night, a real bed. The thought feels distant, almost foolish. The only fullness you'll ever know here comes from exhaustion. You breathe slowly, the smell of the camp filling your nose again. Smoke, sweat, damp leather, and that faint sour note of boiled grain that never really leaves. Your stomach growls once, softly. You ignore it. There's no point fighting something that can't be fixed. The hunger will fade once you're too tired to care. You shift slightly, pulling the cloak tighter, curling your knees toward your chest. The movement makes your muscles cramp, but it helps hold the little warmth you have left. You hear breathing around you, heavy and even. Someone snores softly. Someone else mutters in his sleep. The noise is strangely calming. It means everyone survived the day. You let the sounds blend into the background, steady and rhythmic. Hunger gives way to fatigue, and fatigue to something close to rest. Outside, the last fires collapse into ash. The camp sinks deeper into stillness. You imagine the cold spreading through the air, sliding over the ground like a living thing, seeping through the cracks in the tents. You can almost feel it moving, searching for places where it can creep in. You breathe slower, shallow, conserving warmth the way you conserve food. Every breath is an act of stubbornness. You don't dream much anymore. When you do, it's rarely about home. Sometimes it's about food. Simple things like bread still warm from the oven, the smell of olive oil, the sound of someone cutting into a loaf that isn't frozen solid. You wake from those dreams angry, not sad. Hunger does that. It turns nostalgia into resentment. You've learned not to think about flavour, only function. Bread isn't meant to be soft anymore. It's meant to be enough. When dawn creeps in, grey and reluctant, the hunger wakes with you. It's never gone, just quieter when you're asleep. You reach into the pouch at your side, pull out the bit of bread you saved. It's hard as stone, edges white with frost. You break it with your teeth anyway. It cracks like dry wood, scraping your gums. You chew until it softens, swallow, and sit in silence for a long moment. The world outside the tent is still muffled by snow. You can smell smoke starting again somewhere nearby, the first fires of the day. You slip your cloak on and crawl outside. The cold hits like a slap. The camp is stirring, men moving slowly through the pale light. The same smells rise again: ash, wool, boiled grain. The bread sits heavy in your stomach, but it's enough to keep you standing. That's what matters. Hunger never truly ends here. It just pauses between meals. You rub your hands together, watching your breath fog in front of your face. Another day is beginning, identical to the one before it. Another meal will come, the same grain, the same bread, the same smell of smoke and effort. You take one more deep breath, tasting the cold air, and step forward toward the sound of the morning orders being called through the mist. The ache in your stomach follows you, quiet but constant. The only reminder you need that you're still alive in a place where even that feels uncertain. The camp begins to move again, boots striking frozen ground, smoke rising through the grey. You join the others, the memory of cold bread still on your tongue, the taste of survival lingering longer than anything else ever does. Sleep doesn't come easily in a Roman camp, and when it does, it never lasts. The cold keeps most men half awake already, but what really keeps the eyes open isn't discomfort, it's fear. The kind that lives quietly, moving through the ranks without a sound, shared by everyone but never spoken aloud. Out here, surrounded by darkness and snow, the enemy isn't always a man. Sometimes it's the thought of one, the idea that something is moving out there where the firelight ends. You pull your cloak tighter and stare into the night. The fire beside you is almost out, the last embers sinking under a thin layer of ash. You're on watch again, the same as every few nights. 2 hours standing still in the cold, listening for what may or may not be there. The rotation never changes. You know every sound by now. The creak of tents in the wind, the shifting of men in their sleep, the occasional soft stamp of a horse's hoof in the distance. Each sound is familiar, but that doesn't stop your mind from turning them into something else. The snow has started again, light but constant, flakes swirling down through the dark. The sky is hidden. There's no moon, only the faint, silver reflection of starlight on the frozen ground. You stand at the edge of the camp, spear in one hand, shield slung over your shoulder. The leather of your gloves is stiff, your fingers barely able to curl around the shaft of the weapon. Your breath fogs in the air, rising, breaking apart in the wind. You shift your weight from one foot to the other, trying to keep the feeling in your legs. The cold has a way of creeping upward, starting from the ground, climbing through the soles of your boots until it reaches your bones. You stamp your feet softly, careful not to make too much noise. Every sound carries farther at night. You glance toward the next post, where another figure stands motionless. You can't see his face, but you know he's as miserable as you are. You raise your hand slightly, he does the same. It's not greeting, just proof that neither of you have frozen yet. The camp behind you is silent. Rows of tents, dark and still, outlined faintly by the glow of buried coals. The snow softens everything, turning the sharp lines of the fortifications into smooth mounds. You can see the faint shimmer of frost on the wooden stakes that form the walls. Beyond them lies nothing. Open ground, forest, maybe the faint outline of hills if you squint hard enough. It's the kind of emptiness that plays tricks on your eyes. You start to imagine movement where there is none, shadows that shift when you're not looking. Your ears strain for sound. The wind makes it difficult. It howls through the camp in slow, uneven breaths, rising and falling like the sea. It brings with it the smell of smoke and something else, the metallic tang of snow, the faint hint of rot from the latrine trench downwind. You wrinkle your nose but don't move. Moving too much means losing heat. The centurion who set the watch warned everyone about it. Stand still, stay silent, think warm. You're doing two of those things right. You focus on the horizon again. Every few minutes, you think you see something. A figure, a flicker of movement, a shadow darker than the rest. Each time, it turns out to be nothing. A branch bending in the wind. A patch of snow shifting under its own weight. Still, you can't stop looking. The human mind doesn't like emptiness. It fills it with threats just to feel alive. Your eyelids grow heavy. It's dangerous, this kind of exhaustion. Not the kind that makes you want to sleep, but the kind that makes your thoughts drift. You blink hard, dig the spear butt into the ground to anchor yourself. You think of the men who've fallen asleep on watch and what happens to them. There's no mercy for that offence, not even in weather like this. You've seen the punishment before. A circle of men with sticks, a man forced to stand while they beat him for his failure. The cold doesn't forgive, and neither does Rome. You keep your eyes open, the wind shifts, coming from the north now. It carries a different sound, faint, distant, like something cracking. You straighten instantly, spear tight in your hand. You listen, holding your breath. It comes again, sharper this time. It could be a branch. It could be more. You glance toward the next post. The other guard has heard it too. He's looking your way, frozen in place. You wait together, the snow falling harder now, muffling everything but your heartbeat. After a few moments, the sound stops. The wind returns to its regular rhythm. The world feels empty again. You exhale slowly, breath visible in the air. Your shoulders relax a little. You tell yourself it was just the forest. Everything out here makes noise. The trees, the animals, the earth itself when it freezes and cracks. You know this, but it doesn't stop the unease. You turn slightly, scanning the perimeter again. The torch planted in the snow beside you burns weakly, the flame thin and blue at the edges. You reach out and adjust it, shaking off the ice that's built up on the shaft. The light flares briefly, then settles back into its pale glow. The minutes stretch like hours. The cold seeps through your boots again, climbs up your legs, settles in your knees. You shift your stance, roll your shoulders, breathe into your hands. You try to think of something else. The warmth of the fires back in camp, the smell of grain boiling, even the discomfort of your armour, anything but the stillness in front of you. But the silence keeps pulling you back. You can hear the faint creak of your cloak as you move. You can even hear the snow landing on it, soft, delicate, endless. You start counting in your head just to keep focus. 10 breaths, 20, 50. The numbers don't mean anything, but they fill the space. Somewhere behind you, a tent flap rustles. You turn slightly, see a figure emerge. Another soldier, heading to relieve himself at the edge of the camp. He moves like a shadow, careful and quiet, then disappears again. You turn back to your post, relieved for the brief confirmation that you're not alone in all this white and silence. An hour passes, maybe more. You've lost track. Your hands are numb, Your jaw aches from clenching it. The torch beside you has burned down to half its height, dripping hot wax into the snow where it hisses and freezes. The world has gone colourless, the night pressing down like a weight. Every sound feels sharper now. You hear the faint clatter of armour from the sentry line, the cough of another guard somewhere down the wall. You cling to those noises. They remind you that life still exists. Then you hear something new. A faint rustle, soft but deliberate. Not wind, not snow. You freeze, breath caught in your throat. The sound comes again, closer this time. You tighten your grip on the spear, tilt your head slightly. The direction is unclear. The snow absorbs everything, bouncing sound in strange ways. You squint, eyes watering from the cold, searching for movement. For a moment, you see nothing. Then, just at the edge of the torchlight, something shifts. A darker shadow against the dark. You can't tell if it's moving toward you or away. You whisper a single word, a call to the next post, and see the faintest response, a raised hand in the distance. The other sentry has seen it too. You wait. The silence returns, heavier now, pressing in on your ears until you can hear your pulse. You raise your spear slightly, the point angled forward. The weight feels good, solid, grounding. You tell yourself that the shadow was nothing more than snow falling from a branch. You tell yourself that, and you don't move. The minutes pass, the cold deepens, the sound doesn't return. Eventually your muscles start to tremble from fatigue. You shift your stance, lower the spear, and try to breathe normally again. You know the watch will end soon. Another man will take your place, and you'll be allowed to crawl into the relative warmth of your tent. The thought is almost dangerous. It tempts you toward distraction. You fight it, keeping your eyes on the horizon until the faint sound of approaching footsteps reaches you from behind. The next sentry appears out of the dark, wrapped in his cloak, spear over his shoulder. He nods once, wordless. You nod back, grateful. Your shift is over. You hand him the torch, flexing your fingers as blood starts to move again. The relief is physical, immediate. You turn toward the camp, your body heavy, each step an effort. The snow crunches softly under your boots. The wind feels colder now that you're moving, sharper against your face. When you reach your tent, you push aside the flap and step inside. The air feels warm compared to the outside, though it's still cold enough to sting your lungs. The others are asleep, their breathing steady, cloaks drawn up. You sit down quietly, unbuckling your gear, laying the spear beside you. The smell of smoke and damp wool fills your nose again. You close your eyes, leaning back against your pack, and let the tension bleed out of your shoulders. You're too tired to sleep right away. The stillness of the watch has followed you inside. You can still hear the wind, the faint crackle of torches outside, the echo of footsteps that might still be there, real or imagined. You rub your eyes, press your palms against them until you see colours. The cold has numbed more than your skin. It's taken parts of your thoughts too, leaving only exhaustion behind. You lie down slowly, cloak pulled up, the straw crackling beneath you. Your muscles twitch from the strain of standing still for so long. You curl on your side, knees drawn up, eyes still open. The memory of the shadow lingers, that faint movement in the snow that might have been nothing at all. You know better than to dwell on it. The mind creates enemies when the cold is too deep. Still, you find yourself listening for it again, as if it might return. The camp remains quiet. No alarm, no horn, no sound of movement beyond the wind. The fear fades slowly, replaced by the heavy calm of exhaustion. You breathe through the cloak, smelling the wool, the smoke, the faint metallic scent of your own armour resting nearby. You think of how every soldier has felt this same fear, in the same stillness, in 100 different places. The feeling connects you to all of them, living or dead. You close your eyes, finally letting your body go slack. Sleep comes in fragments, shallow, restless, but real enough. Outside, the snow keeps falling, covering footprints, erasing the night's small movements. The camp breathes in rhythm, a field of weary men hidden beneath white silence. The watch goes on, the next shift standing where you stood, eyes open against the same darkness, waiting for the same nothing that always feels like something. And when dawn comes, pale and indifferent, it will find the camp exactly as it was. Quiet, cold, still breathing, still afraid, still alive, still... Illness in the cold doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in slowly, quietly, until one morning a man wakes up and realises his fingers don't work the way they did the night before. By then it's already too late. In the Roman camp, sickness is as familiar as hunger, and frostbite is its silent twin. Neither announces itself. Both are patient. You notice it first in the smallest things. The way your fingertips feel numb even beside the fire. The strange pale colour that doesn't go away when you press against the skin. The dull ache in your toes when the march begins. Then the absence of ache when it's too late to feel anything at all. The men talk about it in low voices. Not out of fear, but habit. It's as common as blisters or bruises, another enemy they can't fight with steel. This morning the air is colder than usual. Even the smoke from the fire seems to move slower, heavy and grey. You're tightening your boots, fingers stiff, when you see the man across from you pull off his glove. His hand looks wrong, swollen, discoloured, the fingertips greyish white. He stares at them like they belong to someone else. The centurion notices but doesn't speak. He just looks at the hand, looks at the man, then turns away. There's no cure here. The best anyone can do is wrap the fingers in cloth and keep marching. The smell of sickness has its own note, sharp and sour, layered under the usual smoke and sweat. You can smell it now, faintly. Fever comes next, always. It moves through the camp like rumour, invisible, carried on breath and contact. The Medici do what they can, but their tools are few. A small chest of herbs, some vinegar, a handful of copper instruments that look older than the men using them. They work in a corner tent near the centre of camp, where the wounded and the sick lie together on straw that has changed colour from use. You pass by that tent sometimes, and you try not to look inside. The sound is enough. Coughing, groaning, the wet rattle in a man's chest that means he won't last a week. The smell is worse than anything else in the camp, thick with sweat, blood, and something sweet and rotten underneath. You breathe through your mouth and keep walking. You've learned not to stop there unless ordered. There's nothing to offer except pity, and pity doesn't keep men alive. During the day, the frost takes its own toll. The wind bites through armour, finding every crack, every loose strap. You can feel it slicing across your neck, your wrists, the edges of your fingers, even through the gloves. The cold doesn't just hurt, it drains. It pulls warmth out of you the same way the Empire pulls strength out of its soldiers. Slowly, endlessly. You march anyway, because stopping is worse. You've seen what happens to those who fall behind. Lips blue, eyes glassy, breath coming out as mist until it stops altogether. You remember one man in particular. He had been fine the night before, eating, laughing even, huddled near the fire with the rest. In the morning he didn't rise. His face was calm, almost peaceful, but his hands were black at the fingertips, stiff and curled. The centurion ordered his body carried to the edge of camp. No burial, not in this frozen ground. Just a mound of snow over what remained. No one spoke his name again. The army doesn't have space for mourning. The strange thing is how normal it all becomes. You adapt, not by getting stronger, but by feeling less. Pain dulls into background noise. Hunger turns into routine, and even sickness becomes just another part of the landscape. The men still joke, still curse, still live. One of them has wrapped his entire foot in strips of wool, tied with twine. He limps, but he laughs about it, calling himself the wooden man. No one laughs loudly. Loud means weakness, but a few smirk. Humour is the only medicine Rome forgot to ration. At night, when the fires burn low, you hear the coughs again. Not the normal kind, but the deep, raw ones that come from fever. The sound spreads tent to tent, a kind of music that no one likes, but everyone expects. You're lying in your cloak, trying to keep warm, when the man beside you starts shaking. You glance over and see sweat shining on his forehead, his teeth chattering though the air is cold enough to freeze them. You reach out, touch his arm. His skin feels like wet cloth, clammy and too hot at once. You pull your hand back. Fever means contagion, and contagion means orders to move him. By morning he's gone. Not gone in the permanent sense, not yet, but carried to the medic's tent before dawn. His spot beside you is empty. The straw there is damp. You avoid it without meaning to. Later, someone else will lie there, and the rhythm will continue. The camp never changes shape, even when the faces inside it do. Frostbite and fever, two things that break men quietly. Neither brings blood or glory. You can't fight them. You can only wait to see if they choose you. You flex your hands, watching the colour in your knuckles, making sure it returns when you press the skin. It does for now. You take comfort in that tiny, meaningless detail. The Medici walk through the camp once a day, checking for signs. They move quickly, heads down, wrapped in cloaks that smell of herbs and vinegar. They don't make eye contact if they can help it. You've learned to do the same. A look can turn into an order, and an order can turn into isolation. Better to keep your face blank, your voice steady, your breath even. Illness has a way of finding attention. By midday, the sun manages to break through the clouds for the first time in days. The light glints off the snow, too bright to look at. You squint, eyes watering, and for a moment it almost feels like warmth. The illusion lasts a few minutes before the wind changes and brings the cold back twice as hard. You adjust your cloak, covering your face. The air smells faintly clean, and you almost wish it didn't. The cleaner it smells, the less life there is left in it. You stop by the fire pit, crouching low to warm your hands. The coals are half dead, grey and red, but enough to thaw your fingers. You turn them slowly, palms out, watching the steam rise from the wet fabric of your gloves. The man across from you does the same, his face pale except for the red on his nose. He's muttering something under his breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. You can't tell. You just nod once. He nods back. It's all the comfort anyone has time for. When night comes again, the sickness feels closer. The air inside the tent is thick, the smell of sweat and sour breath strong enough to sting your throat. Someone's coughing again. Not the same man as before. Another one. The sound is dry at first, then wet. You roll onto your side, eyes open, staring at the dim outline of the tent roof. You can hear the wheezing, the ragged inhale, the slow exhale that sounds like defeat. You don't move. You just listen. Movement feels disrespectful somehow. The man coughs again, harder this time, and spits into a rag. The sound of liquid hitting fabric is unmistakable. You close your eyes. You've seen that rag before. The colour that comes up with it. Red against brown wool. It's the one sight that still turns your stomach. You breathe shallowly, trying not to let the air move too much. Sometime later, the coughing stops. You don't know if he's asleep or dead, and you don't check. Either answer is a kind of mercy. You stare into the dark until the shapes blur, then finally let your eyes close. Sleep comes like it always does. Sudden, shallow, unfinished. In the morning, the medic comes again. The tent flap opens, a rush of cold air sweeping in. The man in the corner is still. The medic checks him briefly, then nods. 2 others lift the body, carrying it out without a word. The flap falls closed, and the air settles back into its old heaviness. No one speaks. There's nothing to say. You pull your cloak tighter, rubbing your arms through the fabric. The wool smells like smoke and vinegar now. You look at your hands again, press your thumb into your palm, watch the colour return. It does. You flex your fingers. They still move. You tell yourself that means you're fine. You tell yourself that every day. The camp moves on as always. The cooks light their fires, the soldiers form ranks. The hammering starts from the blacksmith's tent. The same smells, the same sounds. Somewhere, a new man fills the empty space where the sick one used to sleep. The rhythm of the Legion continues, steady as a heartbeat, even as the men inside it fall one by one. By the time the sun dips again, the cold is sharpened to a blade. You stand by the fire once more, hands held out, face numb, eyes half closed. The flames blur as the smoke rises past you. You know that tonight will be the same. The coughing, the shivering, the waiting. You'll lie there and listen to the bodies next to you breathe, hoping each sound continues. You'll feel the ache in your fingers and wonder if it's the start of something worse. And when you wake, you'll check your hands again, the same way you always do. You'll press the skin, watch the colour, count the breath, and tell yourself you're fine. Because in the Roman winter, the body isn't a friend. It's a test. Every sunrise is proof that, for now, it hasn't failed you yet. When the night grows quiet enough that even the wind sounds tired, the thoughts start to drift back to Rome. They always do. Not the empire, not the idea, not the banners or the speeches. The real place. The one with smells and warmth and noise. The one that feels like it belongs to someone else now. Lying on cold ground beneath a leather roof, surrounded by men who breathe in unison. You find yourself trying to remember what home really looked like. It's strange how hard it becomes to picture something you once saw every day. You turn on your side, straw rustling under the cloak. The smell of the tent fills your nose again. Smoke, damp wool, sweat. You breathe through it, trying to summon something better. You remember the colour of clay roofs baking in the afternoon sun, the sound of water running from a fountain near the market, the way bread smelled when it came out of an oven. The memory feels fragile, like something you could crush just by thinking too hard about it, You keep it simple. A single street, a window with light behind it, the smell of olive oil. Anything more fades before it's real. Around you, the camp is half asleep. Some men are still whispering, their voices low, rough, blending with the crackle of the last fires. They talk about home too, though no one says the word out loud. They use hints instead. A vineyard, a wife's name, a street corner near the Baves. The sentences trail off halfway, ending not because they've run out of things to say, but because finishing them hurts. You listen without turning your head. Each voice carries the same distance, the same ache. The cold presses harder, as if the air itself resents the warmth of thought. You pull your cloak tighter and stare at the faint glow of the coals through the gap in the tent flap. It flickers, steady and small, the only light left. It reminds you of the oil lamps back home, the ones that burned quietly while the city hummed outside. You used to think those nights would never end. The sound of neighbours talking, of merchants closing stalls, of dogs barking far away. Now the silence feels too big. The ache in your chest isn't hunger or pain. It's something quieter, heavier. Homesickness doesn't burn like fever, or freeze like frostbite. It sits somewhere behind the ribs and waits. You can go days without feeling it. Then it catches you all at once. A smell, a sound, the way a man says a word. It happens tonight when someone nearby mutters a curse that only men from the Tiber Valley use. You look toward him, but he's already turned away, his face hidden under the cloak. You don't say anything, but the word stays in your head like an echo from another life. You remember the last time you saw the city, the heat, the dust, the sound of sandals on stone. You'd left at dawn with the others, the air still cool, the sky pale gold over the hills. The roads had looked endless even then. You told yourself you'd be back soon, that every campaign ends eventually. You didn't know that the memory of that road would outlast the feeling of walking it. Now, lying here, you try to imagine what it looks like without you. The house you left behind, the people who stopped waiting after a few months, the fires still burning in the hearths, the same market still shouting, the same fountains still running. The idea that life continues somewhere else feels impossible, but you know it does. Rome doesn't stop for its soldiers. It never has. The city breathes while its men freeze and sleep in places that barely have names. Someone turns over beside you, muttering in his sleep. You can't make out the words, but the tone is soft, almost tender. The kind of voice men only use when talking to someone they miss. You wonder what he's dreaming of. A wife, maybe? A child he hasn't seen in years? Maybe just a bed that isn't made of straw and dirt? You envy him the dream. Your own never come like that anymore. When you dream, it's of marching, of endless grey roads that lead nowhere, of trying to light fires that won't catch. The mind carries duty even into sleep. The coals outside fade a little more. You can hear the soft sigh of the wind moving over the camp, lifting flakes of snow from the ground. It makes a sound almost like the sea. You think of Ostia for a moment, the smell of salt, the creak of ships, the calls of sailors. It was noisy there, alive. The memory stings, not because it's gone, but because it feels too far to ever reach again. You shift your position, trying to find warmth in the straw. The cloak slides against your chin, rough against skin, already rubbed raw by the cold. You breathe slowly, eyes open, watching your breath fog in the air. It's strange how even your breath feels borrowed out here, like it belongs to the wind more than to you. You stare at it until it fades, then close your eyes. The homesickness doesn't fade. It grows quieter, deeper, turning into something else. A kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with the body. You think of all the men who've slept in tents like this, in winters like this, thinking the same thoughts. The same distance stretched between them and whatever they once called home. Maybe that's why the Legion works, because everyone carries the same ache, and it keeps them moving in the same direction. You fall into a half sleep, caught between waking and memory. The sounds around you blend into something softer. The breathing of men, the rustle of fabric, the whisper of wind. You dream without knowing it. In the dream, you're walking through a narrow street lined with stone walls that glow orange in the evening light. The air smells of baked bread and warm oil. You hear laughter from somewhere ahead. You turn a corner, but there's no one there. Just the shadow of a house you almost recognise, the outline of a window, the shape of light spilling through it. You reach out, but the warmth vanishes before your hand touches the stone. You wake with a start. The tent is dark again, the air colder. You blink, disoriented for a moment, half expecting to see the walls of home. The straw shifts under you as someone moves nearby. The reality settles back in slowly. The smell, the cold, the quiet. You rub your eyes, exhale softly, and let the dream fade. It doesn't hurt as much as it used to. The distance feels permanent now, like a scar that stopped bleeding but still aches when the weather changes. Outside, a faint sound of footsteps crunches through the snow. A guard changing post. The sound is steady, rhythmic, human. You listen until it fades. The firelight flickers through the seams of the tent again. Weak, orange, alive. You focus on that instead of the ache. The flame is the closest thing to a hearth you'll ever have out here. You remember the hearth at home, how its smoke clung to the roof beams, how the walls glowed red at night. You remember sitting near it as a child, the heat soaking into your legs, the crackle of wood soft and hypnotic. You can't remember your mother's face clearly anymore, but you remember her hands setting the bread near the fire to warm. It's strange how the body remembers warmth more vividly than faces. You can almost feel the heat now, phantom against your skin. It lingers for a moment, then fades, replaced by the chill creeping through your cloak. You turn on your back, staring into the dark. The tent feels smaller tonight. Maybe it's just the cold, pressing everything closer. You breathe out slowly, the air white for a moment before disappearing. A few men start murmuring again. Someone is whispering a prayer. Not the official kind, not the ones recited in formation, but something quieter, personal. You can't hear the words, only the rhythm. It reminds you of the way your father used to speak under his breath when the house was dark and the city outside was sleeping. You listen until the voice fades. The silence that follows feels softer somehow, less empty. The homesickness doesn't leave. It just finds its place among the other aches. You know now that it won't ever stop. It becomes part of the rhythm of survival, another pulse beneath the noise of orders and footsteps. You stop trying to fight it. You let it sit quietly, like a memory folded at the bottom of your pack. Eventually, your body gives in. The exhaustion overtakes thought. Your eyes close. You fall asleep to the smell of smoke and the faint warmth of the dying coals, dreaming again of streets that no longer look the same, of fires that actually burn bright enough to reach your face. And when you wake, the memory will already be fading, replaced by the cold breath of another Roman morning, another stretch of road between you and everything that once felt like home. The trumpet always sounds before the light does. It's never loud enough to startle, just steady and sure. A note that seems to come from somewhere far away and cut through the cold like a blade. It's the same every morning, the same pitch, the same length, the same meaning. You wake before your eyes open, before thought arrives, already knowing what it means. Time to rise, time to move. The air inside the tent is thick and sour, heavy with the breath of men who've been sleeping in the same wool for days. You exhale once, your own breath visible even here. You push the cloak back, and the cold hits instantly. A physical thing, like being dunked in icy water. The skin on your face tightens, your fingers refuse to bend. You sit up slowly, the straw rustling beneath you, stiff with frost that's crept in overnight. The ground feels harder than it did yesterday. You rub your hands together, trying to force the blood to wake up. Someone groans beside you, pulling the cloak over his head like it could block out the sound of the trumpet. Another coughs, the wet, heavy kind that's been echoing through the camp for days. No one speaks. Words don't belong to mornings here. Only movement does. You swing your legs over, boots scraping the dirt, and push yourself upright. The tent feels too small for the bodies inside it, every shift causing another to move. The smell of sweat, smoke, and frozen leather clings to everything. You reach for your gear automatically. The armour's beside you, stiff and cold, the metal coated with a faint layer of frost. You brush it off with your sleeve, but the frost clings stubbornly, biting into your fingers. You flex them once, twice, then start fastening the straps. The first buckle always feels like punishment. Leather hardened by the cold, your hands half dead, every motion clumsy. You curse under your breath when the strap slips, the sound barely above a whisper. Around you, others are doing the same, the chorus of buckles and grunts, the real music of the morning. The trumpet sounds again. A second call, shorter, urgent. The officers will be up now, shouting through the rows of tents, their voices muffled by the wind. You move faster, shaking off the stiffness that clings to your muscles. The armour settles into place with its usual weight, pressing down on your shoulders, your chest, your spine. It's almost comforting now. Familiar, predictable. You pull your cloak over it and fasten the pin at your neck. The wool smells faintly of smoke and dampness, the same as it always does. You push open the tent flap, and the world outside feels like another planet. The cold air bites so sharply it makes your teeth ache. The camp lies under a thin layer of snow, the tents and walls softened into ghostly shapes. Smoke from the cooking fires rises in thin columns, bending in the wind. The sky is still dark, pale blue at the edges, waiting for the sun to decide if it's coming or not. Men are already moving, some half-dressed, some fully armoured, all with the same blank expressions. You fall into the line of them without thinking. Your body knows the motions better than your mind. You walk toward the nearest fire pit, where a few embers still glow. You hold your hands over it, the heat faint but real. Someone adds a handful of twigs, and the fire stirs weakly, sending up a puff of smoke that stings your eyes. The smell of burning pine mixes with the sharper scent of damp wool and iron. It's not pleasant, but it feels alive. Breakfast is the same as yesterday, a small bowl of barley gruel, barely warm. You take it without complaint, eat standing up, the wooden spoon clinking softly against the bowl. The food tastes like ash, but it fills the space where hunger sits, and that's enough. You scrape the last bit from the bottom and swallow it down, wiping your mouth with the back of your glove. The warmth from eating fades within minutes, replaced by the cold, steady pressure on your skin. Orders are shouted somewhere in the distance. The tone is unmistakable. Firm, unbroken, practiced. You can't make out the words, but you don't need to. Everyone starts moving the same way. Fires are stamped out, tents collapsed, the rows of men forming and reforming in silence. The rhythm of work is precise, even when no one speaks. You pack your belongings. Cloak, pack, rations, and the tent itself, folded into a heavy roll that goes over your shoulder. The leather is stiff, the straps biting into your fingers as you pull them tight. The trumpet sounds a third time. That's the march. You fall into formation, the sound of hundreds of boots grinding against frozen ground, filling the air. The crunch of snow underfoot blends with the low creak of leather and the faint jingle of armour. The column begins to move, slow at first, then steady. The cold turns breath into fog that rises like smoke from the line of men. Each exhale the same pale ghost disappearing into the morning. The world outside the camp is colourless. Grey sky, white snow, brown mud frozen solid beneath it. The trees on the horizon look black against the pale light. You march through it all without speaking. Talking wastes breath. The only sounds are the rhythm of steps, the occasional cough, the crack of ice breaking underfoot. The cold gnaws at your face, your hands, your ears. You pull the cloak tighter around your shoulders, but the wind finds every gap, every weak point. After an hour, your feet start to go numb. After 2, the pain returns, sharp and stabbing with every step. You keep walking. The man in front of you stumbles once, catches himself, keeps going. No one helps. Not because they don't care, but because they can't afford to. The march is survival, and survival doesn't wait. You focus on the rhythm of your boots, the weight of the armour, the faint burn in your lungs as the air grows colder. The body complains, but the body also obeys. Somewhere ahead, an officer calls out a command. The column adjusts, the lines tightening, the shields shifting slightly in unison. The discipline holds even in exhaustion. That's what separates the Legion from everything else. Not strength, not courage, but obedience that outlasts pain. You feel the truth of it with every step. The thought doesn't comfort you, but it keeps you moving. By midday, the sky has brightened, though the sun never really appears. It hides behind clouds, its light flat and pale, offering no warmth. The snow has stopped falling, leaving the ground slick and uneven. You watch your footing carefully, stepping in the prints left by the man ahead of you. The wind carries the faint smell of smoke from the fires still burning back at camp, distant now, but lingering in your clothes. Every breath tastes like iron and ash. The column pauses once to rest. You stand where you are, too tired to sit. The men around you stay silent, some leaning on their spears, others shifting their weight from foot to foot. The officers walk the line, checking for stragglers, shouting at those who slump too far. You chew a piece of dry bread from your pouch, the crust scraping the roof of your mouth. It's cold enough that the bread feels frozen, but it's food. You swallow it down dry and wait for the signal to move again. When it comes, you don't feel it so much as sense it. The faint movement of the line, the rustle of fabric, the first boot breaking the crust of snow. You fall back into motion automatically. Time becomes meaningless. The hours blur. The world shrinks to the space between your own steps. You stop noticing the pain in your feet, the ache in your shoulders. The body stops complaining when it realizes no one is listening. The sound of the trumpet finally returns, distant but clear. It's the signal to halt, to make camp again before dark. The line slows, stops. The men drop their packs, shields and gear with heavy thuds. You unroll your tent, your fingers stiff and uncooperative, and begin to set it up. The process is the same as always. Dig the edges into the ground, drive the pegs with the butt of a spear, pull the lever tight. Your breath fogs the air as you work. By the time it's finished, you're sweating under the armour. The sweat turns cold almost immediately. You crawl inside, the air slightly warmer, your muscles trembling from effort. The familiar smell greets you again. Smoke, damp wool, earth. You sit for a moment, catching your breath, then start removing your armour. The metal clinks softly as it hits the ground. You flex your arms, feel the weight leave your shoulders. The relief is short-lived. The cold returns the moment the armour's gone. You pull your cloak around you, lean back against your pack, and close your eyes for a second. Outside, the camp is alive again. Men shouting, fires being lit, horses snorting, carts creaking. The sound of it is constant, organised chaos that somehow feels comforting. The rhythm of life in the Legion never changes. Work, eat, march, sleep. Each day blurs into the next until time itself feels circular, repeating forever in frost and smoke. You hear the trumpet one last time before night, the signal marking the end of duty for the day. The sound carries through the air, soft but final. You lie back, eyes half open, listening as the fires crackle and the voices fade. The wind slips through the seams of the tent, touching your face with cold fingers. You turn onto your side, pulling the cloak tighter. The ground still shaking faintly from the movement of men outside. Sleep comes slowly, like everything else in this frozen world. You breathe through the rough wool, the air damp and heavy. Your muscles twitch from the march. Your knees ache. Your stomach feels hollow. The trumpet still echoes faintly in your head, the sound of duty and distance. It will call again in a few hours, and you'll rise again without question, because that's what the Legion does. The snow starts falling again, soft and soundless. The camp quiets, the coals dim. The trumpet's last note lingers somewhere in the wind, a reminder that tomorrow will look exactly like today. The same march, the same pain, the same endless road through a world that never warms. Discipline in the Roman army isn't a choice. It's the air every soldier breathes, the thing that exists before orders and after exhaustion. Out here, in the frozen edges of the Empire, it's the only reason anyone is still alive. Without it, the cold would have broken the Legion long ago. Without it, the knights would have scattered men like leaves in a storm. You don't question it anymore. You don't even think about it. You follow, you move, you endure. That's all there is. When the trumpet sounds at dawn, you rise. When it calls at dusk, you stop. The body obeys faster than thought now. You don't remember what it feels like to hesitate. The routine holds you together, like the seams in your armour. It's not comfort, it's structure. A skeleton built from habit and fear. Every motion has purpose, tightening a strap, rolling a cloak, stacking a shield. Not because it brings meaning, but because it prevents collapse. The centurions never soften, no matter the weather. Their voices cut through wind and fatigue like steel on stone. Form up, faster, move, hold the line. The words never change. They don't need to. The tone is enough. It's strange how men can take comfort in the sound of authority, even when it comes with pain. There's safety in repetition, even when it hurts. You remember your first campaign? How strange it had felt to give up control, to let someone else decide when you could sleep, when you could eat, when you could breathe. Now it feels natural. Freedom is a memory that means hunger and confusion. Order means survival. You've seen men break rank once or twice, thinking the cold couldn't punish them worse than command. It always can. A lashing, a sentence of hard labour, sometimes worse. The body heals slower in the cold. The mind learns quickly not to resist. Even the simplest actions follow rules. When you pack your gear, it must fit exactly the same way each time. When you march, your left foot hits the ground at the same rhythm as the man beside you. The legion isn't a group of men, it's a single body. If one part falters, the rest must absorb the weight. You've felt that weight more than once. When the man next to you stumbled, when a cart broke down, when someone collapsed from fever mid-march. No one stops. The formation closes around the absence and keeps moving. The officers call it discipline. You call it instinct. The kind that grows out of fear and repetition until it becomes indistinguishable from faith. Not faith in gods, not in glory, but in the idea that doing what you're told is the only thing standing between you and death. The thought is simple enough to live by. You feel it most during the long watches, when the cold sharpens every sound. The man beside you doesn't speak, doesn't shift, doesn't complain. His stillness reminds you to stay still too. The centurion passes behind, his footsteps silent in the snow, and every back straightens without being told. The discipline isn't learned anymore. It's inherited, absorbed through years of repetition. A Roman soldier doesn't decide to endure. He endures because that's what he is. The punishment for failure is severe, but the reward for obedience is survival. You've seen the balance of it enough times to stop questioning. When a unit falters, the entire group is punished. Decimation, they call it. Every 10th man chosen by lot, executed by his comrades while the others watch. It's rare, but everyone remembers the last time it happened. The fear of it keeps the ranks tight, the eyes forward. Rome doesn't need to shout threats when the memory of one is enough. Still, discipline isn't always fear. There's a strange pride buried inside it too. You feel it sometimes, when the march continues through weather that would kill other armies, when the line holds in silence while the enemy screams, when the camp is built with perfect precision, even as frostbite creeps into your fingers. The pride isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, the kind that grows in the cracks between pain and endurance. You don't boast about it, you just keep walking. You've noticed how the older soldiers move. Their motions are mechanical, perfect. They waste nothing. Not breath, not warmth, not thought. When they sit, they fold their cloaks the same way every time. When they eat, they chew slow, deliberate, like the act itself is part of the drill. They never forget a command, never drop a tool, never leave a weapon uncleaned. You used to think it was obsession. Now you understand it's a kind of protection. Routine shields the mind from chaos. The body may break, but the pattern endures. There's a saying that circulates quietly among the men. A Roman's strength is his habit. You've heard it from centurions, from grizzled veterans, from cooks and camp guards alike. It sounds simple until you live it. The habit isn't just the march or the camp. It's how you think. You stop imagining comfort. You stop remembering softness. You stop waiting for the end of hardship because it never comes. What replaces it isn't despair, it's function. Every act becomes its own reason. At night, when the cold presses down and the fires are dying, you feel the discipline working even in your sleep. You lie still because moving would disturb the order. You breathe in rhythm with the men beside you, because that's what keeps the heat shared. You wake when the trumpet sounds, without surprise, without question. The body has learned what the mind no longer needs to tell it. You've seen what happens when that discipline cracks, even for a moment. Once, during a storm near the Rhine, the wind tore through the camp and scattered the outer tents. A few men panicked, running into the dark to chase their belongings. The centurions caught them by morning, frozen, faces pale and glassy. The rest of the camp had held formation, shields raised against the wind, waiting for orders. They lived, the others didn't. Order had saved them. Fear had killed the rest. It's not bravery that keeps the legion alive. It's obedience so deep it becomes instinct. You don't wait to feel courage. You move because the man next to you does. You eat when told, march when told, fight when told. Thought is too slow for survival. The rhythm of command replaces it. You used to wonder if that made you less human. Now you think it's what keeps you human at all. The structure, the repetition, the sense that someone, somewhere, knows what they're doing. When a centurion passes by, every man straightens automatically. You watch him move through the ranks, his armour gleaming, his face unreadable. He says nothing, but every head turns slightly as he walks. You feel your spine align before you realise it's happening. He doesn't need to speak. The discipline radiates outward like heat from a fire. Even in exhaustion, you don't let yourself falter. You remember every rule drilled into you. Never let your weapon dull. Never leave a post unmanned. Never eat before duty. Never sleep before cleaning your gear. Each one seems small on its own, meaningless even. But together, they make something larger. A kind of rhythm that feels like the heartbeat of Rome itself. You may be far from the city, buried in snow and silence, but every order links you back to it. The discipline is the chain that binds the empire across distance and time. Sometimes, in the middle of a march, you catch sight of another column far ahead, moving through the same frozen valley. They look like shadows at first. Small, dark, perfectly aligned. You realise that from a distance, they look just like you. The same formation, the same pace, the same endurance. Thousands of men, scattered across thousands of miles, all moving to the same rhythm. That's Rome. Not the marble, not the senators, not the temples. The rhythm, the obedience, the discipline that turns chaos into something that lasts. You feel it in yourself now, even when you don't want to. The body moves before the mind catches up. When the trumpet sounds, you don't think, you rise. When the centurion calls, your legs obey. When the wind howls through the camp, you brace without hesitation. You've become part of the system, a piece of the mechanism that never stops turning. You don't resent it anymore. You just recognise it for what it is. The one constant that keeps men from falling apart. The fires burn lower, the night colder. You sit near one, sharpening the edge of your sword with slow, steady strokes. The sound is soft, but rhythmic, a repetition you've heard every night for years. The sparks rise, flicker, and die. The man across from you does the same, his movements identical. You glance at him, and he glances at you, both understanding without words that this small act is what keeps the mind steady. Discipline isn't just orders. It's the ritual that fills the silence between them. When you finally crawl into your tent, you feel the same ache as every other night. The stiffness in your knees, the weight in your shoulders, the dull hum of fatigue that feels almost like peace. You lie down, adjusting the cloak over you, eyes half open. The tent walls shift slightly with the wind. You hear the faint creak of leather, the muffled sound of others settling in, the rhythm of breathing around you. You let the discipline carry you even now. You breathe in time with the others, slow and measured, as if the entire legion sleeps in one shared breath. Sleep comes quietly. The body obeys, the mind loosens its grip, but the order remains. Even in dreams, the rhythm persists. The sound of marching boots, the trumpet calling from somewhere just out of sight, the endless repetition of motion that has no beginning and no end. It's not comfort, but it's stability. And in the frozen world of Rome's frontiers, that's the only kind of warmth that lasts.